Talking Arsenal, it was just so predictable. Exactly the kind of game that Arsenal lose. You're in a good run of form. Everything's going okay. You've got your players coming back to fitness. You've got a chance to go third in the league. But you're going away to a well-organised, hard-working northern side. What do? You lose 1-0. Obviously, we'll be getting into the whys and wherefores. Talking Tottenham as well. Pochettino needs a win tonight. And Jamie Carragher has apologised to Evra. But first of all, news.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 3, Downing Street says if the government loses this evening's Brexit vote, it will pull the whole bill and push for a general election. MPs will have their say later on whether to support the 3-day timetable to get the deal through the Commons. Boris Johnson has urged all sides to back his agreement.
If we ratify this new deal, which I believe is profoundly in the interest of our whole United Kingdom and our European friends, we can get Brexit done and move our country on. And we can de-escalate those no-deal preparations.
2 babies have been injured after a man in Norway stole an ambulance and drove into a family. Police shot and wounded the suspect in Oslo before arresting him. The Home Secretary's announced there will be an investigation into the deaths of 22 people killed in the Manchester Arena bombing in 2017. Meanwhile, Hashem Abedi, the brother of the suicide bomber, has pleaded not guilty to 22 counts of murder. Police investigating the death of a teenager in Northamptonshire say officers are to travel to the US to speak to the American woman involved. Anne Sakoulas claimed diplomatic immunity and left the UK following the collision. Chief Constable Nick Adderley says she doesn't want to provide a prepared statement, which is her right.
She has also requested to be interviewed by British police officers under caution in the United States. Lawyers have clearly stated that the suspect wants to be personally interviewed by officers from Northamptonshire Police in order for them to see her and the devastation that this has also caused her and her family.
An IS bride who left East London to join the terror group in Syria is launching a legal challenge against the government's decision to strip her of her British citizenship. Shamima Begum, who's from East London's lawyer, has said she'll argue she was a victim of rape by her husband. And an Australian sheep which made headlines around the world for having the world's heaviest fleece has died. The charity, which looks after Chris in Canberra, says he passed away this morning. That's the latest. I'm Will Rowe.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good afternoon, it's the Posh Boys here on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts. Your top stories this afternoon. Arsenal captain Granit Xhaka has lashed out at Patrice Evra's comment that Arsenal are mentally weak. That's coming after last night's 1-0 defeat to Sheffield United. And Mauricio Pochettino admits his team are under pressure. His job could be under pressure as well, ahead of their Champions League game against Slavia Prague tonight. And Eddie Jones is insisting that all the pressure is on the All Blacks ahead of England's Rugby World Cup semi-final on Saturday. This is the Posh Boys on Drive, and we've got to start with Arsenal. Just so very predictable.
Afternoon, Johnny. Yeah, I feel like we've been here before. Deja vu, but it could be deja vu from earlier this season, last season, the last season under Wenger, or possibly any of the last 10 seasons under Arsene Wenger. Arsenal in disappointing capitulation, tame defeat away from home. And this time, the thing that's added to the spice, if you like, is Patrice Evra, who had, let's say, a pretty punchy debut on Monday Night Football. I think we'll be seeing him on that sofa again, won't we? Although we won't get the revelatory sort of stuff that we had with the Luis Suarez discussion, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But yeah, he called them babies, or he said I used to think of them as my babies when we played against Arsenal. And you can just imagine, because I'm a Man United fan, and Patrice Evra was absolutely brilliant for Man United. He was probably for a while the best left-back in the world when other left-backs like Ashley Cole were still playing. He was really, really right up there. But he was a wind-up up merchant. You know, you could tell that people didn't like playing against him. And he said that he used to say to the Arsenal players, "You're my babies." How much would that wind you up if you were an Arsenal player, or any player for that matter? So annoying without being sort of really having a good reason to get annoyed. It's so childish and pathetic, but it would annoy you.
It would, and you're right. But the thing about being called a baby in particular, right, is it's the kind of childish insult where the only way you're going to prove someone wrong with that kind of suggestion, when someone says you're weak and childish, you do not get one over on them and going, "No, I'm not. Why are you calling me a baby? That's really mean." What you do is you get your head down and you scrap and you do your talking on the pitch, you show a bit of steel, you show a bit of fight, and you win a football match. For me, you don't do what Granit Xhaka's done, which is go, "Oh, he talks too much. He's saying mean things about me. It's not fair." Granit, stop worrying about your hair. Get the ball down and play.
Yeah, I think that's well said, actually, Johnny. But the point is that this isn't the first time we've seen Xhaka come out with a somewhat fierier outburst after a match than he showed on it. You know, you remember the Watford game, of course you do. How can you forget a game where you can see 31 shots in a single half of football to a team who, by the way, 9 games into the Premier League season are still winless? He came out and he said that the players need to show more fight. Well, he was quite right. But among those players, and chiefly among them, was Granit Xhaka, who, by the way, about a week later was confirmed as the official captain of the club, which surprised, I think, quite a lot of the fans and possibly some of the players who had supposedly voted for him. And he's come out and done it again. Okay, he's having a pop at a pundit this time, but it's one thing to be sort of talking in public about the media or your players if you're doing really, really well. But Arsenal, while it's not been disastrous, let's stress that they are not in a disastrous position, but they're not in a particularly impressive one either. I don't think the moment is right for the club captain to be bothering to call out, you know, the fans or the media, or whoever it might be, in public, especially after another performance that has become, I'm afraid, typical of what was a once great club.
I think what Xhaka doesn't realise, and he clearly fundamentally doesn't get it, is that arguing back does not help. I grew up as a twin with a very annoying younger twin brother in the mould of Patrice Evra. And every time
He's not listening, is he?
He might well be, actually. Every time he wound me up, my dad would go, "Don't rise. If you rise and you respond to him, that's what he's after, and he'll wind you up even more." Granit Xhaka missed the memo, because responding to this and going, "You're really mean," does not help. It does not help. What you have to do is go, "Yeah, okay, Patrice was a world-class left-back. He's entitled to his opinion. We work really hard. We're going to improve things on the pitch." And quietly inside, of course you're thinking, "Patrice Evra, shut up." Of course you're annoyed, but you should be wanting to prove him wrong, rather than just giving more fuel to the fire, which is all he's done.
Johnny, I want to get your thoughts in detail on what it is that so disappoints you about last night's result and performance, aside from the obvious of losing away to a newly promoted team on a Monday night, etc., etc. I want to get into why it is that you and other Arsenal fans are feeling so disillusioned. Before we do, I think it's only fair to hear from the man himself, Unai Emery, after last night's defeat, admitting, of course, that there is still much work to do.
We have challenge in each match, and for example, tonight a very big challenge to achieve that 3 points, and also be consistent and continue improving things and doing our way, playing with some young players. They are taking experience.
So 47 games into his reign, Premier League games, his first 47 games, his record is near identical to the last 47 of Arsene Wenger's reign. Johnny, what is it about Unai Emery and the way he's managing your club that so many fans are now starting to get seriously annoyed with?
I think he's not managing it. That's the problem. The word managing implies control. It implies being able to dominate every facet of it and know what you are doing in that position of control. I'm genuinely not sure Unai Emery does. And when I say that, I'm not saying he's a bad football manager, right? Because he's the most successful in the history of the Europa League. He took Valencia to consecutive third-place finishes in La Liga. He did relatively good things domestically with PSG. He's no mug, but...
Although there is that good line, I think Le Grove, who joins us later, the Arsenal blogger, put it like this once: he came second in a one-horse race in the league, which didn't do his reputation.
There is that in the Monaco season. The thing that frustrates me is not the results, because actually, if we look at where Arsenal are in the league this season, if we look at where they finished last season, they're broadly where they should be with the players they've got. That is not what I'm taking issue with. What I object to is I don't think Unai Emery has a vision. I don't think he has a plan. With Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who we talk about the whole time on this show and are quite critical of and say, well, is he under pressure? He has a 3-year plan. He talks about it. If you look at the changes he makes, it might not always work, but you can see broadly what he wants the end product to be. With Emery, he chops, he changes, he picks players he knows aren't good enough. Last night, Kolasinac. He knows Kolasinac cannot play at left back in a back four successfully. He knows
so why
that.
didn't Tierney play then?
Well, I don't know why Tierney didn't play, but more bizarrely, he seems to think that the arrival of Tierney allows him to play a flat back four, which suddenly means he can play Kolasinac there. What? If you're not playing Tierney, do not play four at the back. It does not work. He was unlucky in the sense that Pepe should score from 6 yards out. But the thing
I thought, by the way, Saka, who once again showed at least that willingness to take players on, a little bit of drive from a little bit deeper, which I thought Joe Willett provided as well, by the way, a couple of the youngsters. I think repaying Emery's faith. I think if there's one thing you couldn't criticise Unai Emery for, it is his faith in the youngsters. I thought Saka was unlucky to be booked by Mike Dean for a dive.
It looked like a dive to me.
Well, I thought, Johnny, it was one of those where there maybe wasn't enough in it either way, and maybe some referees who aren't Mike Dean would have probably waved play on. They would have said, not enough for a dive, not enough simulation for a dive, maybe not enough contact for a trip. But I think we've seen, as they say, seen the given.
Right?
And I think there was contact, but I've always said there can be contact and you can still dive. It is just how much the degree of simulation there is. There's contact, so I think that it's very harsh to give it as a dive. Yeah. I think as well, because there was contact, and I thought it looked like the sort of contact that might genuinely cause a player to fall over running at pace. I thought it could have been a penalty, but look, you can't be quibbling with things like this.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you should, Pepe, the £70 million player, should be scoring from 5 yards out. You should be creating more good goal-scoring chances in 90 minutes against a newly promoted side. Not take any away from Sheffield United, by the way. And I just want to hear from Chris Wilder quickly because, of course, they had that game against Liverpool just a few weeks ago where a lot of people felt, well, they were extremely unlucky. It was only Dean Henderson, who's been so good so far, whose rare error cost them the chance to at least get a draw. And Chris Wilder said that he feels they've improved a lot since that game.
We backed up a good performance with a good result, and we didn't 4 or 5 weeks ago against the European champions. And we wanted to make sure if we played well against the top sides, you have to get something from the game, and 3 points is a great reward for the players.
You can't deny that they were a team that, if not value for the win, were value for some sort of result, although I thought they probably were value for the win. And they're a good side, Sheffield United. It's really surprised me how much they struggled at home because their home form was so strong last season in the Championship. That atmosphere is, I'd argue, second to not many in the Premier League now. So to have only had 3 points up until now was a surprise, but just reward last night.
Absolutely. And from the Arsenal point of view, that atmosphere is a big part of it, by the way. Arsenal, and this is why Ever is so right, cannot play in a cauldron. If they go up north, and they go up particularly on a night where it might be a bit cold, the old cliche goes, I'm not going to wheel it out, they struggle. They always struggled. As an Arsenal fan in the noughties, you would rather play Liverpool than Stoke. And this, again, was exactly that kind of fixture. You look at it going, Sheffield United away on a Monday night. It should be straightforward. We're going to lose 1-0. And the question now is whether...
Lo and behold.
Exactly. And the question is whether Emery keeps his job. And there will be people, not least Love Sport Drive's very own Martin Allen, listening, going, hang on. How on earth can you call for him to lose his job? If he'd won last night, they'd be third in the league. It's true, but it's not about the result. It is about this lack of a plan. And for me, if Emery doesn't show what the idea is, there is no point keeping him there in any way, shape or form.
How feral, Johnny, you're a loose part, if you like, of Arsenal Twitter, that behemoth that it is. How feral is it getting out there? Is it safe to go back in the water if you're an Emery?
On a scale of 1 to peak #Wenger out, we're dealing with about a 4, where tide is starting to turn.
So we're not at #Emery out, but we've might
had
be
a bit of
thanks for the
memories.
I've seen time to say goodbye.
I've seen a bit of #Emery out. The big difference now is whereas 6 months ago tweets asking to get rid of the manager would have people replying to them going, give him time. They're now getting 2,000 likes, which, slightly scary for him. And to be fair, you mentioned this stat with the last 47 games of Wenger's reign as against the first of Unai's. Keeping in mind, this is when Wenger supposedly had completely lost it. We were told repeatedly.
Well, you literally did not get a point away from home. You didn't get a win away from home in the entire last 6 months of his reign until the Huddersfield game.
And yet,
his last game.
He won 1 more game than Unai Emery over that time, scored 4 more goals, conceded 4 fewer goals, and kept 7 more clean sheets. Now, as a supporter of Arsenal Football Club who never called for Wenger's head, this is unbelievably frustrating because we are playing the same kind of spineless, characterless football that privileges people like Granit Xhaka who have no interest in or ability to fight for the shirt. And we haven't got anything for it. And the only thing that stops me from calling for Unai Emery's head at the moment is Unai Emery, in the sense that the only reason he got the job in the first place is who were the options? Unai Emery, Mikel Arteta. There is no point in Arsenal sacking Unai Emery if all they're going to do is gamble on Mikel Arteta. But if someone really elite was available, and I'm not saying they would be, but if
Jose Mourinho.
No, let's not go down that particular rabbit hole. But if
I don't see why not.
If there was, well, you get two good seasons and then total collapse.
Well, unlike the last few years where it's been continued unending brilliance.
No, fair enough. If there was a Max Allegri, though, or if a really long shot, a Diego Simeone, if they would come, and I don't see why they would go to Arsenal, but if they did, at that point, you have a really serious question to ask, because I don't think Unai Emery is destroying Arsenal Football Club. I don't think he's going to create a big problem, but I don't think he's going to carry them forward. He's not going to
solve the ones that already exist.
You're in limbo.
All right, Johnny, well, we are going to talk a lot more about this throughout the show. Martin Allen is going to join us shortly to give us his thoughts on it. We're going to speak to Charles Watts from Goal, who covers Arsenal for them. Later on, Le Grove as well, rarely shy of an opinion he is. A word, though, quickly, before we move on. Mesut Ozil missed his 101st game last night, asked if he was available. Unai Emery said he can help us. Yes, people on Twitter saying, Tom Kloot, for example, a podcaster, Unai Emery's greatest and really only achievement so far is getting a large contingent of Arsenal fans to, for once, passionately back Mesut Ozil. Ian Dart, the commentator, you can become a very good player simply by being out of the team. Witness the current Ozil debate among Arsenal fans. Is he getting it right or is he taking it too far?
Emery?
Yeah.
I don't know. I suspect he's getting it right, I don't see it on the training pitch, but I suspect he is getting it right. He doesn't seem like the kind of person who would have a mindless vendetta against a player. If Özil is at his best, and if he's firing, he has to be in that team.
Some of the stats are remarkable, aren't they? We'll talk about Özil, of course, as we go on as well, but since his debut, chances created, Aaron Ramsey's second with 272. Mesut Ozil's first, obviously, with 522, nearly double that of anyone else. And we know how many games he's missed, 101 of them. And he's only had one major injury. It shows when he is playing, when he's on song, he creates chances almost like no other player in the league. But we haven't seen that for a long time, have we? Let's be quite honest.
Honestly, I have no idea what's going on. I could speculate. I have no idea at all. But he's got no excuse, because if he's not injured, that is the kind of game, 1-0 defeat to Sheffield United, where your 350 grand a week man should step up, grab the game by the scruff of the neck and go, right, let's go and win it. There is no one in this Arsenal team like that. Coming up, we're talking Jamie Carragher, and he's apologised to a certain Mr. Patrice Evra. The big question is why.
This is Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Full of skill. Full of flair. Full of desire. Fulham FC is full of fire. Oh, what a goal! Be there at Craven Cottage as Fulham continue their surge towards the top of the Sky Bet Championship. Watch the unmissable action live in SW6, home of London's original football club. Absolutely brilliant. Grab your tickets now at fulhamfc.com.
Hi, I'm Marilyn from Oxfordshire. My current insurance company quoted £245.08 to reinsure, and a spokesman said obtain me a price of £173.49 for the same cover. This was a fantastic saving for me, and next time my car insurance comes up for renewal, I will be going through a spokesman said. No doubt about that.
With a spokesmansaid.com, fighting for you, saving you money.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work. Even a quick look at a message, or firing off a quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
Believe me, he who laughs last thinks slowest. Ha ha ha, see, that was a laugh because I'm clever enough.
Love sport.
I have to say, we were treated to a fairly spectacular Monday night football last night, not least due to the introduction of a certain Mr. Patrice Evra, who of course combines all of the experience that comes with being one of the Premier League's greatest ever defenders with being a thoroughly bizarre bloke. This is a guy who has in the past got on his Instagram and posted a video of himself sucking, licking and slapping a raw chicken, a man who consistently shouts, "I love this game," and of course who was banned for kicking one of his own supporters, Cantona style. But beyond all of the flamboyance, he's a genuinely intelligent, genuinely thoughtful pundit, and of course a guy who's got the inside track, not just on what goes on in the pitch in terms of games played, but dodgy interactions as well. And he, of course, through no fault of his own, was party to one of the very dodgiest all those years ago with Luis Suarez, when the Uruguayan was still a Liverpool player, when Suarez racially abused him, something he, of course, denied at the time. He ended up serving an 8-game ban for doing so, Guy. And this came up last night. They were talking about the issue of race and racism in modern football after the incident at Haringey Borough, after the incident for the England team against Bulgaria.
Hartlepool a couple of months ago.
Hartlepool, the tweets with Bernardo Silva and Benjamin Mendy, and with Jamie Carragher, then Liverpool vice-captain and also PFA representative for the club in the studio, and Patrice. They started talking about the Suarez incident.
I thought it was actually really good, you know, and I think that sometimes we can overdo the quality of the debates you see sometimes, and people go wild over some minor tactical analysis.
It's pretty bland often.
And I think bland's a good word. I thought this was genuinely really interesting, and I think it was fair to say it was almost a world first to hear Evra talk about it in that detail, and to have Carragher opposite him, I thought obviously really added to it. Just quickly, you've probably seen an outline of the story by now. Obviously, this was on last night after the game, but Jamie Carragher, first and foremost, explaining why Liverpool were wearing those T-shirts in support of Luis Suarez after he'd been given an 8-game ban. They wore Suarez 7 T-shirts while they were warming up before a game against Wigan. This is back in December 2011.
As a football club, your first reaction, no matter what someone does, is to sort of support them, even if you know that they're wrong. Racism, assault, different things, whatever go on, that is the first reaction, really. And as I said, apologies, we got it massively wrong.
And you feel as well like it was quite a genuine apology. In fairness, Jamie Carragher, who I've been critical of plenty of times in the past for various things that have come out of his mouth, but Patrice Evra was there as well, and this was his take on, you know, what he made of Liverpool wearing those T-shirts in the first place.
This is after the ban. If it was before the ban, we're waiting for the sanction. I will clearly understand. But he get the ban. Which message you send to the world when you do that? Supporting someone being banned because he used some racist words.
I completely forgot how outrageous this was until I saw the conversation last night. I forgot they'd even done that. And watching it now, I can't remember if I was as shocked and really offended at the time, but watching it back...
I remember I was, Johnny, I have to say.
It seems perverse.
As a Man United fan, I think you're automatically more attuned, and you'd relate to this on a Spurs level, to something that your rival club does, i.e. if they do something bad, you want the opportunity to jump on it.
When you say attuned, you mean I want to stick the boot in.
That's, I think, what I was trying to say. Yeah, and so you see that happen, and you're literally in disbelief. You're thinking they are not actually doing that. As Evra said, doing it before the ban would be one thing, although remember, he'd been charged
even that,
around a month before the ban was actually dished out. Even that would have been questionable. And this was 8 years ago, and we'll come on to the present day in just a moment, but this was 8 years ago, but I can remember it quite vividly. And then to follow that, not long after, remember, Liverpool came to Old Trafford, and there was talk of, is there going to be a handshake? Which, looking back, is like, who wasn't going to shake whose hand? Maybe Evra wasn't going to shake Suarez's.
He'd have been within his rights.
I guess he would be within his rights. This, in 2011, was obviously fairly close to the whole John Terry, Wayne Bridge situation, where, if you remember, Sky at the time, I think for a first time, showed the pre-match handshakes because there was so much interest. And, of course, Wayne Bridge didn't shake his hand. They had to rearrange which team walked up the other team's, sort of walked past the other team, in order to not have a potential situation where John Terry was hovering in front of Wayne Bridge waiting for a handshake so that Wayne Bridge could just move past. I mean, it was gripping television, don't get me wrong, and I can still remember it to this day. And then Luis Suarez walks past Patrice Evra, who was United captain that day, and didn't shake his hand. And you just thought, oh my God, did I just see that? Surely not. I'll have to see a replay, maybe Evra, but no. And you just think, what on earth has happened there?
Well, on that front, I have to say, I think Patrice Evra went beyond being kind of magnanimous last night and was unbelievably generous to Luis Suarez. He repeatedly refused to call him a racist. He said, I am not going to call him a racist. I think he used racist language on that occasion. I think it would be very, very easy for him to have done so. And for Suarez not to have shaken his hand, I think was staggering. But interesting, firstly, that Carragher apologised, and fair play to him for, on national television,
I think all of Liverpool
holding his hands up. Yeah,
needs to, really. I don't see why Kenny Dalglish, for example, Carragher said it was Luis Suarez's friends in the dressing room. There are only so powerful friends in your dressing room can be, unless Jamie Carragher is saying Steven Gerrard wanted to do it.
I was about to say, I think it will have been Steven Gerrard, who loves Suarez. He talks of Suarez in a way he talks of
very few other
Carragher,
players.
pretty much no one else.
Yeah, all right, maybe it was Gerrard. But in that case, Kenny Dalglish still has the authority to determine what they do. And I think all of those people probably owe Evra an apology and other victims of racism, because it was so tasteless, insensitive and misjudged that I think the point is, when it was relived last night and here today, you're still going, wow.
I think as a general point, more broadly as well, T-shirts of this kind are dodgy in a footballing context. When are they ever good? When has a club done one of these T-shirt campaigns? We've all gone, yeah, well done, lads. We've had the ridiculous Manchester City ones where, you know, Ilkay Gundogan hurts his knee and suddenly it's like he's died. No, we're not praying for Gundogan. He'll be back in 6 months' time and he'll still be earning 150 grand a week. He is okay. The other point, and I want to bring Manchester City into this part of the conversation more broadly, is Carragher's suggestion that when you're in that kind of team dynamic, as soon as a teammate is accused of anything, your first response is to defend them. And I understand that up to a point. I mean, for example, us working together, your colleagues, your mates, you are a team in a sense, and you do want to stand up for your mates, just like...
I don't.
Okay, well, I would stand up for you. It's a bit like if you go on a night out and one of your mates spills his drink on someone and your mate is actually in the wrong, but still, if there's something happening to your mate, you are kind of going to stand up for your mate because he's your mate.
No, I don't do that either.
Fair enough.
I shy away from all physical confrontation.
I didn't say be physical. I'd run a mile.
Or verbal.
Well, true. What I'm saying is I understand that instinct broadly, but surely the instinct to defend your mate goes up to a certain point and then it stops, right? At the point where your mate has not only been accused of using, well, no, frankly, being racist, what he said was racist, and found guilty of it and banned for it, that is the point where surely, I know 2011 was a while ago, but it's not that long ago.
No, it's not 1911.
No, exactly. And that surely is the point where you go, you know what, Lewis, you are my mate, but come on,
You're
mate.
on the wrong side of this. No,
And
I
you're on
completely
your
agree.
own.
Well, you mentioned Man City there, so let's bring that in. And obviously, we're talking about offences, if you like, if you're going to deem it an offence. And I think I'm right in saying that the FA, their investigation into Bernardo Silva is still pending, still ongoing. It's not been decided whether he's guilty or not, whether or not, you know, what the FA say is what you agree with is a different matter, I suppose. But it is an offence on a different scale if it is found to be an offence. But what we saw were two reactions in particular that I thought were really telling. First, Pep Guardiola, so that of the manager, the equivalent to the Kenny Dalglish one, of course, and Raheem Sterling, who's not just a teammate, a high-profile teammate of both Mendy and Silva, but of course has become an extremely outspoken and extremely, it's important to stress, I think, important and well-spoken kind of campaigner on racism and anti-racism causes. And so for him to back Mendy publicly, as he did, Bernardo Silva publicly over the Mendy photo as he did, was a little bit surprising. And there are people who argue, John Barnes, one of them, who say it was not offensive, and they agree with Raheem Sterling in that sense. But you wonder how much it was genuine judgment and how much of it was clouded judgment based on the fact that they are mates and teammates. And I think you're right, Johnny. It's a difficult one to quantify because it is quite a strong bond that you have. You know, I think whether you're a teammate at an amateur level or a professional level, if it's someone you've known for a long time, you respect as a person and a teammate, I think you're loath to condemn them for something unless you regard it as extremely or as extreme. And I guess the Suarez one was an extreme case, but there was doubt. Suarez's defence was, you're only going on Evra's word, your word against mine. Once you found guilt, how they did it as a club, decided that as a club, Kenny Dalglish and club hierarchy involved, that still beggars belief.
It is mad to wear the T-shirt. I actually think the Pep Guardiola defence of Bernardo Silva, which dropped off pretty quickly, was...
He did it a couple of times.
He did it twice and then he stopped, but quite ill-advised in the sense he was going, he's a great man, he speaks 5 languages. You think, yeah, all right. It doesn't mean the tweet wasn't offensive. Wearing the T-shirt is baffling. And I understand the difficulty of that scenario. I've had a situation quite recently where a friend of mine got accused of something pretty bad. And you have got that dynamic where you don't know whether the accusation is right or not. You don't know whether you can trust them or whether you can trust anybody else involved. And you want to defend them. But actually, at the point where they might be wrong, you have to back off, I think. And friendship goes up to a point and probably no further. And I would apply that to the case of Liverpool.
Yeah, I'd agree, Johnny. And look, we got loads else to talk about this afternoon. I just want to say on Evra and the biggest issue of all that, of course, they were talking about last night, racism. I thought he spoke really, really well. And I was pleasantly surprised to see him as a pundit talking like that, as a former Man United player talking like that, who's not always, I think, behaved brilliantly in the past. I thought he spoke well, and I think we'll come back and talk about maybe some of those comments a little bit later in the show, talking about how he tries to be just a good human being rather than a good black person or person of any particular identity. I thought that was all really interesting and worth discussing a little bit later. Martin Allen's coming up though, Johnny. He may not be here with us in person today, but I know he and you are going to enjoy talking about Unai Emery and, of course, that man Liz Mousset.
Who?
This is Love Sport.
Join me, Ewan Thomas and the Posh Boys here on Love Sport Drive this Friday as we count down to the Rugby World Cup semi-finals. All the build-up to England versus New Zealand and a massive weekend of football, all on Love Sport.
Love Sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive and make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Hello, my name's Paula. I'm from the Shropshire area and I'm a business development manager. I use a spokesman said for my car insurance where I've saved over £500 and also on travel insurance as well. So in total, me and my family have saved about £600. I would definitely use it again and I would definitely recommend it.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
There are fewer than 10 days to get ready for Brexit. Find out what you need to do to prepare now at gov.uk/Brexit.
Before you set off on a long journey, remember to check your vehicle. Are your tyres correctly inflated? And are the treads deep enough? Have you got enough fuel? Is your oil level right? Checking your vehicle doesn't take long, but can prevent a breakdown or accident and save you money. So, before you set off on a long journey, check your tyres, fuel and oil. Highways England, connecting the country.
This is Love Sport.
Well, this is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive, and we got lots to talk about this afternoon. Arsenal, of course, Granit Xhaka having a pop at Patrice Evra for suggesting that Arsenal are babies. I'm sorry, lads, but you are. You are. You had a big chance to go third in the Premier League against a newly promoted side, albeit, it has to be said, a very well organised, a very impressive newly promoted side, and you bottled it. But I guess the one bit of solace for Arsenal fans will be they're not the only club in North London in a spot of bother. Mauricio Pochettino has admitted not only that his side are under pressure, but that his job could be under pressure. They really need a win tonight in the Champions League. It's Slavia Prague it's a crucial game. It's a must-win game, to be honest, not just in terms of getting a few points on the board early in the group, but also in terms of just stopping the rot. Because at every point we think there's a chance here. There is a chance for Pochettino to start turning the ship around. He and his players somehow don't seem to be able to take it. I certainly thought Watford at the weekend, perfect opportunity. OK, you're struggling a bit. You are struggling, but you're up against bottom of the table Watford. You can definitely get a result there. Apparently not. They struggled, and Arsenal, of course, falling into that category last night. Now, Guy, let me set the scene for you for my evening last night, right? We had a lovely radio show, you, me, and Love Sport Drive's very own Martin Allen. We finished that, did all of our post-show meetings and all of that, rushed home for Sheffield United versus Arsenal. Now, it was a busy night in my household because the landlord was coming to look around our flat today. So there was a frantic whole flat clean going on. So I had the football on in the tablet in the corner. I was cleaning the kitchen, cleaning the floor, had the lovely vegetable curry bubbling away. So all hands on deck. Very sophisticated. 8:30, the ball hits the back of the net for Sheffield United. And at exactly that moment, literally as the referee blows for the goal, my phone rings. Can you think why?
I can't, Johnny. I can't. Although I was listening back to a little bit of the show yesterday, I found this clip that I thought may be of interest. Should we have a listen?
Let's have a listen.
Johnny, the very last bit of Chris's interview, he said, we need to score goals. That is the key.
Is Lys Mousset not doing it for them, mate?
He scored 2 and got on points. Got on points. Bang. Well, so for the listeners, Johnny said, Lys Mousset, 10 million. What a waste of money. That's out of order. So each time, and it's happened twice, Mousset has won games for Sheffield United. I send Johnny a text and say, 10 million. Mousset scores again for points for Sheffield United.
Bang indeed. Those were, of course, the dulcet tones of Love Sport's very own Martin Allen, who joins us on the line now. Good afternoon, Martin. Thank you for your time.
Posh boys.
Could we have a little dramatic rendition of the voicemail you left me last night, please?
Mousset. Did it go something like that?
Repeatedly. I think 1-0, Mousset.
What, did he score?
Yeah.
That lump from Bournemouth, who they brought in for 10 million.
You know what?
He's rubbish.
Ha, 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 ha. Ha, ha, ha. Yes, I put my foot in it yesterday. I said Mousset was rubbish, and he scored the winner against my football club. Yes, I deserved it. But, Martin, this wasn't exactly a world-class, earth-shattering strike, was it? It was a 2-yard tap-in from a set piece.
Johnny, when you read the papers this morning, it said Sheffield United 1, Arsenal 0, scorer Mousset. That's all that matters. Tap in, diving header, long range volley, irrelevant. He scored the goal that's made them 3 points and takes them up level with Tottenham.
Well, I said I was cooking a vegetable curry. I ended up eating quite a large slice of humble pie as well. More broadly, Martin, what went wrong from the Arsenal point of view?
Well, as I understand it, he's getting the manager again. He's getting lots of criticism that they should get rid of him and all that sort of stuff. It's only, I stand to be corrected, I think it's only the second game that they've lost, and the other one was against Liverpool. So they haven't been doing too badly. And currently they haven't really got, from what I can see, their best fullbacks playing in Tierney and Bellerin. Lacazette has also been injured, who's as we all know, is a fantastic goal scorer. And the centre-half position, which I think, you as a Johnny fan, you've been speaking about that position as an Arsenal fan, and you've been saying, we need to strengthen, and Holding looks like he's really close now to being fit. So it's 3 of the back 4, plus his centre forward. And when they're all together and they've played regularly over a little period of time, I think it's going to be a really good Arsenal team. But without those players playing, and they're starters, those players are starters, then you're not going to get quite as good results. But they're not doing badly. Where you've got to say, sack the manager is a donut.
Martin, I'm going to try and be a neutral. Well, I am a neutral. I'm a Man United fan, so we're for once talking about Johnny's club rather than mine. And I'm hearing from Johnny and I'm hearing from the world of Twitter that there are a lot of fans who aren't just annoyed that they've lost the game in the second game of the season. They are really, really quite annoyed with Unai Emery. As you referred to, there have been calls for his head, and you always get that from some idiot fans. And Arsenal fans have obviously been calling for one manager or other to be out for about the last 10 years. But they seem to think that there's no coherent plan in terms of the strategy and transfer market or on the pitch, that they've had enough of him, that 47 games that he's had in charge, that he's got a worse record in than in Wenger's last 47 games when we all thought he was terrible, show that he's had enough time. He's not worth persevering with. What do you say to them?
Well, they're probably the same people are shouting from the rooftops about Arsene Wenger. You know, it seems, Guy, now that any manager at any club, as soon as they go poor run of form, then the calls are coming for the manager. They have got some good players, good young players that he's pushing forward there, with the lad Martinelli to be added to that. Willock's been doing really well. Saka, the centre forward, he's been doing really well. Another young boy. So they need to be patient. They need to wait, and until your best team is out on that pitch over a 6-8 game period, you can't tell, and you can't tell about the results until your best players are playing. And I've heard this idea that people shouting out, "Oh, I don't know what his plan is." What do you mean you don't know what his plan is? I saw him play against Notts Forest a few weeks ago, and there was a massive crowd. Every player there got a standing ovation for that performance. They play great football. They've got pace up front. The Pepe hasn't quite settled in for his 72 in yet, and he missed a glaring opportunity last night, which was probably, in all honesty, the game 0. Until all that's settled down, then you've got to be patient. You've got to wait, and all this clamour all the time to sack the manager. I don't think it's right.
The thing is, though, the definition of inconsistency is that sometimes you're brilliant, right? Sometimes you go and stick 5 past Nottingham Forest. Sometimes you get beaten 1-0 by Sheffield United. You're absolutely spot on that Arsenal were brilliant against Nottingham Forest. And you're also spot on that Unai Emery is capable of creating an Arsenal team that is genuinely excellent. But I stand by this point that he doesn't know what his plan is. The team changes every single week. The system, in the way that he actually employs people, changes every week. It doesn't seem to me that he has a cohesive vision. And so when I say I would rather have someone else in charge, I'm not saying the results are terrible. I'm not even saying Unai Emery is a bad manager. I'm just saying he's indecisive, and I would rather have someone with a vision in place. I would rather have Arsene Wenger, because at least with Wenger you could see what he was trying to do. I'm not joking. I'm really not. But to be fair,
how many Arsenal fans have I heard all the time say Arsene Wenger's football's boring? Arsene Wenger's got to go.
To be fair, I never said that. I genuinely didn't.
But all the people, all the Arsenal fans are saying he's had enough. 20 years, they've had enough. And it may have been right for him to go. He may have been there too long. Until you've got your best team out there and the manager's got all his best players out there. And as for being indecisive, well, I don't think he's been indecisive with Mesut Ozil, top earner, most expensive player, on 2 more years left on his contract. He's been thoroughly decisive there.
Yeah.
Gone bang. You don't try when we don't get the ball. You walk back and look at the ground. That sort of style of football is no longer will not work in the Premier League. It will not. And as for that result last night, I think Sheffield United just a couple of weeks ago drew, I think, away at Chelsea, didn't they?
They did, yeah, 2-2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they probably could have won.
And against Liverpool, they played really well, didn't they?
They did.
They were unlucky against Liverpool. And didn't they play a couple of other top teams as well and done really well? So just because it's the name of Sheffield United and they haven't got the history of Manchester United and Arsenal and Tottenham, and they've come up through the leagues, they've got momentum, they've got team spirit, they've got unity, they've got organisation. They've been in a good place for a good few years.
Oh.
Arsenal, they have been in this transitional period, and it's going to take him time to bed those players in, get someone like Pepe into that team. Can he score the goals with the pace that he's got to turn and take Arsenal forward? It will take time. It is not just a flick of a light switch.
Yeah, time's the crucial word there, really, isn't it? I feel like Arsenal fan base, to generalise slightly, maybe slightly unfairly, but they've become an impatient bunch over the last few years. And I wonder, Martin, and thinking of time, I'm looking at Stoke travelling Sheffield Wednesday's night, 6 points from 2 games. Who'd have thought that after they lost to Huddersfield a few weeks ago? Nathan Jones still there, still battling on. And we look back now at Man United, David Moyes taking over from Sir Alex Ferguson, and people say that while, of course, he didn't do very well, he made some bad decisions, anyone would have struggled to fill those shoes. And although the situation at Arsenal was very different when Wenger left, do you think that there's a degree to which you could say that Emery is always going to be slightly damned? Because not because of he's following Wenger, but because following anyone who's been in a place for 20, 22 years is going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah, that's never going to be easy. Right across the board, he's made a lot of changes. Steve Bold has been moved out of the position as first team coach, who was sort of set in stone on the Arsenal bench. And he's brought in Freddie Ljungberg. He's got his own coaches. He was the manager of Sevilla that went to 2 Europa League Cup finals, wasn't he? Was that the guy?
I think he won
3 in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. And people are saying he ain't got a plan. Hello? What do you think? He's in London sightseeing, going round on one of those open top buses. Has he got a plan? Of course he's got a plan. He's not a donut. He's a proper football manager, and you have to wait for him. I know he can't speak very well proper good English, but he's a brilliant manager. And until all your players are fit, give him a break and let him get on with it, and he will deal with it the best way he can. And without a shadow of a doubt, those young players, that Willock is a proper good player, and so is Saka. And when they come in, there's nothing better for a football supporter to have young players who have come through your academy into your first team. They give it something fresh, just like what Chelsea have got right now. And Arsenal have got good players coming in to join Emery's team. You should be looking forward to the future, not slamming him. It's a difficult place to go, Sheffield United on a Tuesday night. Difficult place. And Chris Wilder is a good manager. And you have to be patient and you have to wait, just like Man United fans will have to do.
Martin, good evening. A pleasure as ever to talk to you. And if you ring me tonight, I have to say my head will be going in the curry pot. But always a pleasure to hear your dulcet tones. Martin Allen, that former West Ham midfielder, Brentford and Barnet boss as well. And of course, a regular on Posh Boys on Drive. He will be joining us in the studio again tomorrow from 3. So tune in for that. I have to say, the Emery on the open top bus comment was world class. Martin Allen at his very, very best. Coming up, Guy Watts keeps spying on me, and someone is spying on England's rugby training.
Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Henna men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're in
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
If you see somebody showing any of the signs of a stroke, you don't have to think about it, you just dial 999. Use the FAST test. F. Face. Has their face fallen on one side? Can they smile? A. Arms. Can they raise both arms and keep them there? S. Speech. Is their speech slurred? T. Time. Time to call 999 if you see any one of these signs. Act fast, make the call, dial 999.
I believe in traditional marriage. I've had 3 of them.
Love Sport.
Guy, has anyone seen Marcelo Bielsa recently?
Yeah, he bought a flight to Tokyo a couple of days ago. Not been seen since, though. Why?
Weird. No, I was just thinking, in entirely unrelated news, England rugby coach Eddie Jones is claiming that someone's been spying on England training.
What, filming our training session?
Filming our training session. So the pitch
And
is...
Marcel Bielsa's just gone to Japan.
I thought he was Leeds manager. Really weird. Anyway, the training...
He was seen on a flight the other day.
Was he actually?
Yeah, Heathrow Terminal 5, BA flight.
Bizarre. Maybe we'll give him a ring later in the show. The story here, according to Jones...
You're saying...
I'm not saying anything. I just want to catch up with him. I want to hear how Eddie Nketiah is getting on.
Yeah.
We've talked Arsenal. The story, in entirely unrelated news, is that England's rugby training has been taking place in the shadow, if you like, of a kind of block of flats. And Eddie Jones is suggesting that visibly in one of the windows there was a gentleman who may or may not have been Argentinian with a large camera pointed suspiciously towards Farrell and co.
I love how bad an attempt at doing that this sounds. Do you know what I mean? Right, let's hear first from Eddie Jones talking about this, answering a question about whether or not he was bothered by the session apparently being filmed by someone who maybe shouldn't have been there.
Look, you just don't need to do it anymore, mate, because you see everything. You can watch everyone's training on YouTube or whatever there is. There's everything out there. There's no value in doing that sort of thing now. Absolutely zero.
Look, mate, it's just a game of rugby. But surely the point is self-evident that if you are choosing to train somewhere in full view of the block of flats that you mentioned, you're not trying to keep it secret. If you are doing it behind a fence of some kind, as Derby County were, and you've had to send a bloke with a pair of wire cutters and binoculars, it's a little bit more of a proper attempt to spy, isn't it? The idea that New Zealand have maybe sent someone, I think, is very interesting. I think it's telling that they are... willing to go to those lengths, that they're maybe worried enough to do that. And however much he's willing to sort of joke about it in public, I bet he's not happy with it. Even if there's public evidence of it, I bet they're working on some stuff that's not been seen before, I hope they are before a World Cup semi-final.
I love two things here. The first is the suggestion that this kind of dark art, this kind of chicanery is still going on. The second is that Eddie Jones's only real objection to it is that there's no value. You can see it anyway. If it was really secret, then I'd be annoyed, but you're wasting your own time. I think it is pretty shocking, actually, even if...
But it's not proven, is it? I think it's come from Eddie Jones himself, the suggestion that there was a camera there.
Yeah,
it may have been someone who lives in the apartment.
It may have been, but even if it is someone who lives in the apartment, then thinking I can flog it to the sun for a few quid or whatever's going on, it is fairly shocking because training not in a kind of locked lead box that is completely inaccessible to all eyes and cameras doesn't necessarily mean you are inviting people to watch you. And if it were the case, we don't know whether it is, but if it were that the All Blacks have sent someone, you do think, come on, lads. Come on, you're already the favourites. You've already got the Barrett brothers and all of the rest of that firepower. Do you really need a Nikon as well?
Well, maybe they do, Johnny. I think England are going to cause some serious problems. But you're saying that they're the favourites. Eddie Jones is reinforcing that message as well.
Put up your hand if you think we can win. There you go. So no one thinks we can win. There's 120 million Japanese people out there whose second team are all the All Blacks. So there's no pressure on us. We're just got to have a great week, enjoy it, relax.
He didn't give whoever was there long, did he?
Oh, no.
Hands up. Look, you see, now put your hands
in
up.
half a second.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it was cut a little bit. I don't know. But I think this is really interesting. I think this is much more interesting than the spying stuff. And I know there's a sort of tabloidy angle to the spying stuff. And obviously with what happened with Leeds and Derby earlier this year, it adds a little bit to it. And I get all that. But I think if you're talking about mind games, if you're talking about the psychology of how these games are won or how you can gain an edge maybe, I think that these sort of comments, and they're not the only ones that we've heard from Eddie Jones in the build-up to this game. We'll hear more, I suspect, as well. We had Martin yesterday picking out, didn't we, the sort of praise that he'd lavished on New Zealand, the greatest rugby team there's ever been, and all that kind of thing, a winning machine. But, no one averages 100 in Test cricket, no one wins Grand Slam, 6 love. Kind of reminding them that they're expected to win comfortably whoever they play against. I think they're really clever, I have to say, because there's no other way that... you can react to that as an England player than to sort of say, oh, all right, yeah, pressure is off. Yeah, of course he's right in saying that. Everyone does think New Zealand's going to win. All the Japanese are going to be cheering for New Zealand. We've just got to go out there, focus on what we do, and hope that, you know, we're good enough to pull off the upset.
Will we not get any bonus points from some Japanese fans because of Jones's Japanese links, both in terms of heritage and also his rugby career?
I think there will be, Johnny, actually. I think that's a good point, and I think that Eddie Jones is, you know, laying it on thick, shall we say, when it comes to that. I think he lays on everything thick, doesn't he? He doesn't really do things by halves, certainly not when he's talking to the media. He just loves he loves all of it, Eddie Jones, and that is why I enjoy having him as the England coach. Like, I was reading a piece by Mick Cleary in the Telegraph today, arguing that whatever happens on Saturday or possibly next weekend, if we get to the final, Eddie Jones should remain as the England coach. He is contracted for another 2 years, remember. But there are some people who say that regardless of what happens, he should go, that it's time for a new cycle. If he's not going to be there for the full 4 years, we should get rid of him and bring in someone else. But I think that, he is a brilliant coach. I think, you know, we've seen that with what he's done with everyone from Australia, South Africa to Japan, and now, to a degree, with England as well. And I think we've got someone that genuinely reveles in and relishes the idea of being an international coach, someone who loves the limelight. Okay, some people don't like that he does, but he does. And I'd rather have someone who does than someone who sort of resents it, who's someone who doesn't, who wants to shy away from it, because we are only living in a world that is getting more obsessed with what is actually, you know, going on behind the scenes, that wants more and more details. Social media wants it, the papers want all the rest of it. And I think that if you don't have someone like Eddie Jones, you're at risk of having a bit more of a clash than you do at the moment with a guy that seems to genuinely enjoy every aspect of it.
And when you say every aspect of it, you mean every aspect of it. Because I think one thing that you can see very clearly Eddie Jones takes genuine glee in is the wind-up. Yeah. That head-to-head with Michael Cheika. He was loving every single moment. He was loving putting the pressure on. He was loving taking the pressure off. He was loving all of the build-up to the game. It clearly made the victory for him sweeter. And then he loves afterwards being able to go, well, you know, a respectful relationship's really important. Michael's a great guy. We've had a long rivalry. I wish him all the best. After you've wound him up, beaten him, and cost him his job.
The bit I loved most was the nibble he got out of Michael Cheika before the game by bringing in that Aussie guy, the rugby league player, Ricky Stewart. And Michael Cheika's going, oh, I don't know why he's doing that. I wouldn't bring in Gareth Southgate. It's like, chill out, Michael. I mean, you're making it so obvious that
Gareth
this has annoyed
Southgate
you.
Doesn't play rugby, Michael.
Yeah, well, there is that point as well. And I think he probably would have been a little bit busy anyway. But that sort of thing, it betrayed the fact that Michael Cheika was clearly less content with what was going on within his camp. And what I'm hearing from Eddie Jones, yes, he's trying to wind people up a bit, but he literally cannot help that. I think he would do that in whatever environment he was in. But the vibes I'm getting off him are very positive. He is giving off a happy vibe. And if he's giving off a happy vibe, I think that means the England team are a happy camp. And why shouldn't they be? They've won every game at this World Cup. They thrashed Australia, their biggest ever winning margin in a World Cup knockout game. And yeah, I know we're going up against New Zealand, but I don't think we could be approaching it in a much more positive frame of mind, state of the squad as well, with all 31 players fit and available for selection as well. So yeah, I think as far as England are concerned, let them spy on us. You know, let people put more pressure on the All Blacks if that's what they want to do. No one had ever won the Rugby World Cup twice in a row. The All Blacks did that last time. Oh, sorry, I should have said New Zealand. They won it twice in a row. No one has ever won it 3 times in a row. I think the pressure is massively on them, and I think Eddie Jones is right to point that out. I like what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. No one is expecting us to do it, and we absolutely can. I just wonder if we should start filming them, or not even filming them, just put a dummy camera outside every hotel room, just really get in their heads.
This is Love Sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Stop paying too much for your energy bills. Brian saved money on his at a spokesmansaid.com. Can you?
I'm Brian from Swaddling-Cote, South Derbyshire, and I saved about £400 on my energy bill with a Spokesman Said. The iSpokesman Said website was very easy to use, and the money I saved I put towards a holiday.
Compare home energy quotes from the UK's biggest suppliers in just a matter of minutes with a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Whoa! Look how much saturated fat is in these chocolate biscuits. It's surprising how much is in our food and drinks. For us kids, eating too much saturated fat can lead to harmful fat building up inside, which we can't see, increasing the risk of heart disease or stroke when we get older. So be food smart. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app and start making healthier choices today.
There are many things a mother can pass on to her baby. Her smile, her eye colour, and her immunity to whooping cough. Whooping cough is a very dangerous illness for young babies, and at the moment it's spreading fast. A simple vaccination during your pregnancy can help to protect your baby in their first weeks. Please speak to your GP, nurse, or healthcare professional and pass on your immunity.
What an hour we've got coming up for you on Posh Boys on Drive. We're going to be discussing our top story, the Arsenal. Why are they so hopeless? Is Unai Emery under pressure? And more to the point, where on earth is Mesut? Is he injured? He's missed 101 games in the 6 years since he came to the Premier League. 101! He's only had one major injury in that time. There is something going on here, and we're going to be asking Charles Watts, Arsenal correspondent for Goal, exactly what that might be. We're also going to be talking to Rob Debney, the former international rugby referee, about Jaco Piper's inadvised photo, which has cost him a job at the Rugby World Cup semis, and a little bit of weirdness from the world of American football too. But first, news.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 4, Boris Johnson has told MPs he'll abandon his Brexit bill if he loses a crucial vote later. He's trying to get the legislation fast-tracked through the Commons, but Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn is promising to vote against the 3-day timetable for debate, insisting it's too short.
We got the bill at 8:15 last night, and this afternoon at 1 o'clock we start debating it. It's ludicrous, utterly ludicrous. These are serious issues that have huge implications for communities, factories, jobs, people.
The PM says if the timetable's rejected and the EU agrees to a delay, he'll push for a general election instead. Police investigating the death of Harry Dunn in Northamptonshire will travel to the US to interview the suspect under caution. Anne Sakoulas, who claimed diplomatic immunity and left the UK after the crash, has asked to be questioned. A pharmacist from Cowbridge in South Wales has been jailed for 16 months after overcharging the NHS by more than £76,000. Cardiff Crown Court heard 52-year-old Michael Lloyd gave out cheaper medication but billed the health service for more expensive drugs. Matalan workers on Merseyside have ended their long-running industrial action and accepted a new pay deal. More than 500 members of the GMB union have been in dispute with the company since August. Tour de France winner Geraint Thomas has received an OBE at Buckingham Palace for his services to cycling. The 33-year-old from Cardiff was given the award by Prince William. Thomas, who had his first child 3 weeks ago, reveals what he and the Duke of Cambridge chatted about.
He thought I'd be in Lycra, but I said I had a puncture, so I had to get an Uber. And we had a bit of a chat about the rugby, obviously. Yeah, still on for an England-Wales final, which will be interesting. Yeah, and I've just had a baby boy as well, so we had a quick chat about that. So, yeah, it was nice, really nice.
And England's come second in a list of the world's top tourist destinations to visit next year. Lonely Planet says it has timeless treasures, only beaten by what it calls the Himalayan paradise of Bhutan. That's the latest. I'm Will Rowe.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good afternoon. You're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive with me, Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts. Here are your latest headlines. Arsenal captain Granit Xhaka has lashed out at Patrice Evra. That's after the former United man suggesting Arsenal are babies after last night's defeat to Sheffield United. And Mauricio Pochettino admits his team are under pressure ahead of their Champions League game against Slavia Prague tonight. while Eddie Jones is insisting that all the pressure is on the All Blacks ahead of England's Rugby World Cup semi-final on Saturday. We have got a cracking hour coming up for you. Later in the show, we're talking to England cricketer Tamal Mills. He's been drafted by the Southern Brave for the 100, so we'll be getting his thoughts in our build-up to that competition. But our top story this afternoon is Arsenal. They had a chance to go third in the Premier League. It was all looking fairly straightforward away at Sheffield United. Tough opposition, but get your heads down and you can do it, or not. We are very fortunate to be joined on the line by Charles Watts, who is Arsenal correspondent for Goal. Good afternoon, Charles. Where did it all go wrong?
Where did it all go wrong? Point in one area, they just didn't play well enough, plain and simple, and they haven't been playing well enough all season. That sort of performance you saw last night, it's pretty similar to what they've served up since the start of the season, really. And fortunately, they've been getting results despite the performances. But last night, the poor display caught up with them, and they weren't able to get anything from it. Aubameyang had an off day. He didn't dig them out of a hole like he has done plenty of times this season, and in the end, they lost. And that's about it, really. It wasn't totally surprising, even though they'd only lost one game in all competitions going into last night's game. I think an awful lot of Arsenal fans knew it was going to be a difficult game, and the sort of predictability of it all was a bit sad, really. I think a lot of people would have said 1-0 Sheffield United and for the goal to come from a set piece, and that's exactly how it played out. I think the first goal was always going to be important. If Pepe sticks away that chance on the breakaway and Arsenal go in front, I think they go on and win the game. But as soon as they went behind, the struggles that we've seen plenty of times this season came to the fore again. They're not creating enough. They're not giving the strikers enough chances to create to score. So what chances are being created are all coming from out wide. There's nothing coming from the central channels. And Sheffield United a very good team defensively. They've got the best record with Liverpool in the Premier League, and they comfortably really saw out Arsenal's threat and got a win they thoroughly deserved.
What is your take on Pepe been since he arrived at the Gunners?
I thought it was good initially. I thought it was exciting. I remember I was up at Anfield for his debut. I thought it was really impressive that day. I thought it was good against Spurs in North London derby, and then he started to struggle. It all really started at Vicarage Road in the 2-2 draw. He really had a difficult game there, and then he went to United, and it was awful at Old Trafford. And you can just see his confidence has gone, really. I think what he's all about is taking players on, and you look at his dribbling stats. They've kind of it goes perfectly downhill when you look at it as the season's progressed, and that's a clear sign that his confidence is struggling. He's not doing what he wants to do. He's not taking players on. He doesn't feel confident enough to do that. But I actually thought he played well yesterday. I thought he was Arsenal's best player. He missed that chance, obviously, but other than that, I thought it was the one player who was looking to actually get on the front foot and take players on, and he caused Sheffield United some problems. And I was really surprised that he went off. He just had a couple of shots before he went off, and I was surprised that United took him off rather than Saka, who I thought for the first time since he's broken into the team really struggled. And so yeah, it was one of many confusing decisions in my mind that Unai Emery's made in recent times.
And there is, of course, a World Cup winning German elephant in the room, Mesut Ozil, who, of course, wasn't at Sheffield United. He's missed 101 games in his 6 years with Arsenal, despite only having one serious injury in that time. We know that Unai Emery clearly doesn't rate him or doesn't like him, or there's something going on. But why has he missed so many games generally?
Well, I mean, there's been illnesses, there's been the recurring back problem. I mean, the illness thing is, widely reported and known about. I mean, the games he's missed this season haven't been for anything other than Unai Emery. I mean, he's been fit. He could be playing. Aside from that first game up at Newcastle, when him and Kolasinac were left behind after the security issues outside Kolasinac house. But other than that, this season he's perfectly fit and available, and he's just being left out because Unai doesn't want him in a team, or I think it's more of a wider thing, really. I don't think it's just Unai. I think it's a club decision. They're trying to get him out. They're trying to really force him out, really. They don't want him on the wage bill anymore. They don't think he offers enough to be on the wage bill. And I can kind of understand what they're doing with it, but you've got to be picking up results. You've got to be winning. If you're going to leave a player like Mesut Ozil out, you've got to back that up with results. And while you're doing that, you can just about get away with it. But if you're not getting results, and if you're not getting results and you're playing badly, and you're not creating anything like they certainly didn't last night, and they haven't done in previous matches as well, then you're gonna struggle to be able to justify it, because there's no way you can say that Mesut Ozil would not improve Arsenal. Or at least should be on the bench, because it should be. He's good. He's one of the best playmakers in world football, and he still is a very, very good footballer. And to not have him on the bench, you're hurting yourself in that regard. So I think, like I said, if you're getting results, you can justify it. But if you're not getting results like they didn't last night, then it's only going to cause more anger from the fans, especially when you're playing as badly as Arsenal are playing, because it's really, really difficult to watch at the moment as an Arsenal fan. And there's no way that anyone can sit there and say that Mesut Ozil wouldn't improve Arsenal. And I bet you, if you asked Aubameyang and you asked Lacazette if you'd want Mesut Ozil behind them at the moment, they would, all of them would bite your hands off if they were offered a chance to have Mesut Ozil playing behind them.
When you say that the whole club probably want him out, want him off the wage bill, how possible is it that actually someone above Unai Emery has said, listen, don't play Mesut Ozil. We want to get rid of him in the next transfer window. Just freeze him out of the first team.
I'm not sure if that would have, if it had come from them, but I think that they would have probably given Unai the okay to do what he's doing, and because I think if you're going to be leaving out your highest earner, a player who's taking that much money out of the club, I think you're going to have to talk to it with those above you and get and be able, sort of be given the green light to treat him the way he's treating him, because there'll be serious questions being asked in the boardroom if one of the highest paid player in the club's history by an absolute country mile isn't being played. So he would definitely need the okay from those above him. But whether they've actually said to him, look, force him out, I don't think it's probably that far. I think that it's just that he's been given the okay to do it, and they're kind of hoping that it's going to end. The end result is going to be that he's going to decide not to stay until 2021. But judging by the interview he gave with David Ornstein last week with The Athletic, that Mesut is perfectly happy to stay there until 2021 and take his £350 a week. And, I wonder if Mesut Ozil thinks he can outlast Unai Emery, and that's his game plan at the moment. It's just sort of sit quiet, carry on doing what he's doing.
Gareth Bale sort of syndrome, isn't it? And you can understand it if you're getting paid £350 a week, and you probably wouldn't be too unhappy wherever you were. Charles, I wanted to just ask, carrying on with this Emery stuff, just because I'm feeling as an outsider, I'm not an Arsenal fan, and I'm seeing all this clamour to kind of get him out of the club, I suppose. And I'm looking at a few raw stats, if you like. A second defeat of the season overall, as you referred to already. The youngsters, which I think you can be a fan of any football club and relate to how important that is, that he's bringing the youngsters through, giving them a chance. And I think they're being some of the most exciting players that Arsenal have had. Saka and Willock, I think, have been great this season. Nelson, you feel there's more to come, and there's other players lining up as well. And he's not Arsene Wenger. And I'm sort of thinking, what is it that Arsenal fans actually want? I know, ideally, you want to be top of the league, you want to be competing in the Champions League, but they haven't been doing that for so long. Has it just become a case that fans' expectations have become unrealistic, or do you really feel they're justified in being so critical of him at this stage?
It's the football. I don't think no one's expecting them to be challenged Man City and Liverpool. No chance. But there's a massive opportunity for Arsenal to get back in the Champions League this season. But the football's turgid, and he's just not improved them. I think that's the real frustrating thing. You look at the stats. Everyone thought when he came in, the main thing he would do was at least improve the defence, and he hasn't been able to do it. In fact, he's made it worse, and which is a tough thing to do considering how bad Arsene Wenger's teams were towards the end of Wenger's reign defensively. And there's been no improvement, and he's been brought in. He's supposed to be this meticulous planner, the man who spends all of his week in watching video analysis and knowing exactly what the opposition are going to bring to the team, to face Arsenal each week, and yet he's not able to construct a plan which A, keeps the opposition out, and B, makes Arsenal really stamp their authority on any game, because you can't see after 18 months what Unai Emery's plan is, what style of football he wants the team to play in. This season especially, they're drifting further away from what you kind of thought it might be, because there were times last season where you thought you knew what he was doing, but now it's mismatch, and he cannot get the midfield right, and it's really, really hurting Arsenal, because they're not creating any chances, they're conceding goals, and I think fans are just looking at this as a real opportunity to get in the top four, and they're looking at what Unai Emery's doing and thinking he's going to blow it. And I think that's where the frustration comes from. And when you're seeing teams not play well, I think that's really tight. And they are a tough team to watch at the moment, Arsenal. And I think one thing with Arsenal has always been decent football, even when they've been struggling. At least there's going to be goals and there's going to be some exciting football to watch. But at the moment, it's a real difficult watch. And I think that's one of the things that's really frustrating everyone.
Charles, great to speak to you. Thank you for your time. Charles Watts there, who is Arsenal correspondent for Goal. If I may, this is what I've been saying.
He did actually say a lot of similar things to you, Johnny. It's almost like you don't completely make everything up as you go along. Fair enough. No, I thought he did echo a lot of what you said, and I wonder what Martin, for example, would be making, sitting listening at home, because you can't argue with the fact that Unai Emery has an excellent and impressive record as a manager. I'm not putting him in the Guardiola or Mourinho or Klopp or Ferguson bracket, but he's won trophies in multiple countries. He's won the Europa League 3 times in a row. You're not necessarily in the top 10 managers in the world, top 15 or 20 maybe, but you're not that far below when you've done these things. And yet I can see that there are valid complaints. I've just written down kind of notes along the lines of what Charles was talking about there. When I asked him, what is the reason, what are the reasons, he said there were 2 things chiefly, and it was the quality of football that stuck out as the main one. I thought, interesting. Obviously, everyone wants to see attractive football, not least of all the Arsenal, as you lot like to call yourself. But the football was quite good and entertaining under Arsene Wenger, but that wasn't enough. So I refuse to believe that if, say, the defence was like it is now, which isn't particularly improved, but we'll come to that in a sec. If the defence was like it is now, but they were playing much nicer football, fans would still be going, oh, but he hasn't improved the defence. We had nice football under Wenger. That's not what we need. But if you're going to look at the defence and say that that's not been good enough, well, as Martin always points out, Tierney, injured until about now. Hector Bellerin, and he was a new signing. Hector Bellerin out for the last year with knee ligament injury. Exactly the same with Callum Chambers. They are 3 of the first-choice players in the back
and
four.
Holding.
And, sorry, I meant Holding, not Chambers. Chambers was out on loan last year, of course. He's playing a bigger part after improving out at Fulham. But if you look at who they've had instead, and I know he's not the only one, but Mustafi has been forced on Unai Emery. He wasn't his signing. The club paid 30-odd million quid for him, and he's clearly not up to the task. So Unai Emery, I think, is getting unfair amounts of criticism, I have to say.
Yes, I think there's an element of that, but for every area where he's been unfortunate and for every area where he gets kicked rather harshly, I can give you another one where he seems to me fundamentally misguided. For example, Lucas Torreira is a defensive midfield player, right? At most, he is a rangy box-to-box midfield player. And I might add, he is by far and away, indisputably, Arsenal's best talent when it comes to breaking up play in midfield.
I would agree.
He plays him as a winger. He plays him on the right of an attacking 3. And you look at that and go, Unai, you've won 3 Europa Leagues in a row, mate. I know nothing. I've played a bit of Football Manager. Otherwise, I'm ignorant. But seriously, please explain to me what I am missing. Arsenal fans, since Vieira, for over a decade, we've been sitting there going, give me a destroyer in central midfield. He signed one.
It looked like you
he
found
did
one.
brilliantly on the cheap, and he plays him in an attacking role. It's going to make me tear my own eyes out.
I can see, Johnny, we're going to have to take a pause in a moment just to let you calm down. I do agree. In the other hand, Jurgen Klopp played Jordan Henderson in a similar role on the right the other day, and that looked equally questionable, but that's not to say that 2 wrongs make a right, I suppose. No, I don't get the Torreira thing. I think he's made a mistake there. I think he's too loyal to Granit Xhaka, and Granit Xhaka, by the way, we'll talk about more later for his latest blast at someone involved either in the club or in the media. I really don't know how he makes his decision, but actually when you watch him on the pitch, it's not really much of a surprise. He can't make any good ones off it either. We'll talk more about Arsenal. We'll talk more about Spurs as well. Big game for them tonight. I think Mauricio Pochettino could do with a win nearly as badly as Unai Emery. And we're talking to Rob Debney, the former international rugby referee, in about 15 minutes' time to get his thoughts on the appointments for the semi-finals. No Jaco Piper, eh?
Jaco, what are you doing?
Love sport.
You all right, mate? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay? Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Kenna, Men.
Kid.
Pants and pads.
Urine.
Discreet.
Leak.
Masculine.
Urine.
Secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
Urine.
10 of men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
There are fewer than 10 days to get ready for Brexit. Find out what you need to do to prepare now at gov.uk/Brexit.
Oh, it's okay. Let's face it, when your kids are ill, you'd do anything to help them feel better. But remember, antibiotics aren't always needed. You might not realise it, but taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Help keep your family well. Always take your doctor's advice on antibiotics. Search NHS antibiotics. All better.
Before you set off on a long journey, remember to check your vehicle. Are your tyres correctly inflated? And are the treads deep enough? Have you got enough fuel? Is your oil level right? Checking your vehicle doesn't take long, but can prevent a breakdown or accident. And save you money. So, before you set off on a long journey, check your tyres, fuel, and oil. Highways England, connecting the country.
I told Melania that she draws her eyebrows on far too high. She looked so surprised.
This is Love Sport.
For the best part of a year, we were promised the promised land. Tottenham will move into a new stadium. The atmosphere will be so good, they will win every game at home. The beer glasses will fill up from the bottom and the land will run with milk and honey. Or they will struggle to sell out for a Champions League game against Slavia Prague. Guy, is that the situation for tonight?
Which option are you going for, Johnny?
Not the milk and honey.
Yeah, it's not the milk and honey. It's the off milk and curdled honey or some equally horrible combination of things. Yeah, they have not managed to sell out all the tickets, 60,000 of them for the game tonight. Possibly slightly influenced by the fact that Slavia Prague, Red Star Belgrade have only got 200 fans coming because they've had a ban on tickets being sold to them because of racist chanting in the past, which means maybe Spurs have got more tickets to sell than they ordinarily might. But then again, you look at the map, the virtual map, as you can see them online, of course, when you're buying tickets of areas in the stadium that still have tickets available, and nearly all of them are blue, which indicates that there are at least some tickets available.
Should we go?
Mate, I've got better things to do than watch a poor Spurs team play a poor Red Star Belgrade team and probably get a draw or a low-scoring win. I think that is probably genuinely the conversation that Spurs fans have had, though, is it not? Joking aside, they've gone, oh, there are tickets. Should we go? Oh, I don't know if I can stomach it, mate, to be honest. Tuesday night, cold night in October, probably rather watch at home. And how damning is that for a team that, 4.5 months ago, were contesting the final of this great competition? It is, I think that's why Champions League nights at the moment in this season are going to be, for as long as Spurs are in the competition, which may not be all that much longer, are a great point to properly look back and reflect on, if you like, the fall that they've had, because it is the competition they reached the final of, which Spurs fans rightly hold up as being the pinnacle of their achievements in recent times under Pochettino. But it's come apart. It's unravelled so quickly. 1 point from 2 games in their 2 group games so far. Of course, not doing well in the Premier League either. 12 points from 9 games and in 7th place in a year where a lot of teams are doing poorly. So you can see why fans wouldn't want to be going, is what I'm saying.
You can, but if I were being ungenerous, I would say, well, hang on, if you're a Spurs fan, how many more years are you going to be playing Champions League football, lads? Because it's not looking like you'll be in there next year, and you actually might not be in the knockout stages this time around. So if I got the chance to go and watch Red Star Belgrade, I'd probably have a go, because they might not be in the Europa League for you next year if you even get there. On that front, I love the pettiness of football fans. I love that there is a rival fan somewhere who has gone to look at buying Spurs tickets just to check whether they're struggling to sell them. And if so, he's like, great, I can screenshot it, I can put it on Twitter, and I can stir the pot.
I think in the overall league of football fans' pettiness, it doesn't even rank that high. I agree. I like that someone's done it, although it could have been a journalist as well, couldn't it? I was quite interested by something Harry Kane had to say. We talked a lot about Harry Kane recently, and Roy Keane's comments about him, of course, at the weekend too. We spoke about that yesterday. We'll talk about those a little bit more, of course, but Harry Kane has been arguing that their start this season, which I think it's been fair to say, has been close to disastrous. It's been talk of a crisis and all the rest of it, and will Mauricio Pochettino leave? Will he be fired? He says that the start looks worse because of their success in recent seasons. Let's have a listen.
In a league and a Champions League full of the best teams in
in Europe, in the world, and we've become one of them. So we just got to find a way to get our level back to what it has been, and all we can do is just work harder and try and do that on the pitch.
Interesting. He's sort of trying to bracket Spurs with the best clubs in Europe to, I guess, convince himself, maybe, appease some fans, but also try and bluff his way out of the situation of a tricky question. Not a bad attempt, Harry.
No, decent attempt, but he proves his own
No one's
point.
buying it.
He proves his own point wrong about twice, and the reason why he does that is because Tottenham, being one of those big clubs, or rather being on the precipice of being included in that category, is precisely why this year has to go well. Going, oh yeah, but you only expect it because we're good last year. Yeah, that's correct. But equally, you only did well last year and the year before that and the year before that because you've got brilliant footballers. You've got Harry Kane. You've got Heung-min Son. You've got Dele Alli. You've got Christian Eriksen. You can go, oh, we're in that category. But if you stop finishing in the places that denote that category, those players aren't going to hang around. So going, you expect too much, is farcical. Because if they finish 8th, Eriksen's already going. Pochettino might go. Kane might go. Game over. Tottenham should be a huge club. They have given themselves this extraordinary platform. Pochettino has done an incredible job.
Champions League 4 or 5 years in a row. We forget, I think, easily that until Pochettino came in, Champions League was like it happened maybe twice in the Premier League era before that. Once under Harry Redknapp.
They play great football. They're good to watch. They've got a good stadium. They keep getting Champions League. They've got one of the best strikers in the world. But that platform can go so quickly. This has happened to Tottenham in the past, in the last 20 years, where just as you start building, the good players go because you don't build enough, and you end up managed by Juande Ramos. They are at a delicate point here where they need to step it up a notch. And if they don't, they will find themselves sliding back down.
100%. I want to talk about a couple of Mauricio Pochettino's comments in a moment. First, let's hear from him. Here, he's arguing that his players are trying almost too hard.
To show that we are all together. We need to show that we are with the manager. We need to show that we care. And I want to run more. And sometimes maybe it's run less and not spend too much energy thinking.
You see, that's interesting because he's obviously defending his players, as nearly every manager does, to the hilt in public. But I've seen comments from Moussa Sissoko, for example, who's talked about how the use of the diamond this season, and of course Sissoko's also been deployed occasionally at right back, so maybe his happiness is there to be questioned as well. But he's been suggesting that the move to the diamond has basically made it more tiring for the midfielders. They have less energy as the game goes on, and you feel like maybe Pochettino's either tried too hard himself to, if you like, come up with something new, a new system, or if he is asking too much of his players and they're sort of still trying on the pitch, but they're not putting their energies to the best use that they might, as they have possibly in the past when they've been a very efficient side. I don't know. It's hard to diagnose exactly what's wrong on the pitch, but off it, it's easy to tell. I think they've had a perfect storm of not signing more good players when they've had the ability to, financially maybe, but certainly in terms of the success they've had on the pitch, but also telling some of the current players that they can leave and then keeping hold of them. The Danny Roses, the Alderweireld's, the Vertonghen's, Christian Eriksen possibly as well. And that's not going to give you a happy dressing room. An unhappy dressing room rarely gets good results.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really troubling time for them. And they have to get a good result tonight. A, because it's important to get out of the group in the Champions League. But B, because it'll bring some of that pressure down a notch. And it is a good I mean, Watford would have been the perfect platform.
Yep.
But just to stop the paper talk being so negative, if they don't get 3 points tonight, the whole of our show tomorrow, the whole of virtually every sports show, every back page tomorrow will be pressure builds on Mauricio Pochettino. They have got to avoid that.
They do. Remember, 3 of their recent results have been that 7-2 defeat to Bayern Munich, the heaviest ever at home in the club's history. You've had 3-0 away to Brighton. I know they lost their keeper and captain to a horrific injury early on, but he was also at fault for that first goal. And a 1-1 draw at home to winless Watford, as you say, the perfect opportunity. And let's talk about a couple of those players in particular. Harry Kane, we talked about him yesterday. Is he the right man for Man United to go for? Would he go to Old Trafford? We've seen Gary Neville today respond, if you like, to Roy Keane's comments, talk a bit about who he thinks United need to be signing. And he's mentioned another Spurs player. He says Son, for example, Son Heung-min, is the kind of mobile forward, as he describes it, also putting Roberto Firmino in that category, who would be the ideal signing for United's front line. What do you make of that?
Well, I think firstly, Son and Firmino are really, really different players. I think Firmino would be the perfect signing for the United front line because you could have him operating in the role he operates in for Liverpool, where he could drop slightly deeper into midfield.
Yeah.
You could then have either Rashford and James or Rashford and Martial running beyond
Almost like
him.
Pereira played the other day against
Exactly.
Liverpool and allowed Rashford and James, yeah.
That would be class. For me, Heung-min Son is a class player. He's on the Ballon d'Or shortlist for a reason. He's
So
one
is Hugo Lloris, mate.
Very true, and he's only got one arm at the moment. He is one of the best attackers in the league, but he's exactly the kind of striker United don't need, precisely because he is not a striker.
Another forward who wants to play out wide, as arguably both Rashford and Martial and Dan James do already.
They've got these kind of half winger, half number 9s. No, no, no. For me, the Firmino suggestion is fashionable, but actually what United need is a proper good old-fashioned focal point, a number 9. And when Gary Neville talks about this move towards what he calls more mobile strikers, you wonder whether that kind of Diego Costa figure, if you like, has kind of had its time, because it doesn't seem to be what the elite clubs are after.
No, what a target. I mean, I don't think Diego Costa was a target man. Romelu Lukaku, you could bracket more as that, and he's doing brilliantly out in Serie A. Maybe in the Premier League, it has gone out of fashion a little bit, though, Johnny. You know, when Didier Drogba, dominated defences, Diego Costa to a degree, Lukaku's done it at times, but not really for the very biggest clubs. Maybe it is going out of fashion. And I've always said about Firmino, while he is a brilliant player and I admire him hugely,
He's not a striker.
He's not an out-and-out striker, but there is only one of him. I don't really see... I agree that Heung-min Son isn't an equivalent player. I don't see many at all, and I've always said that Liverpool will struggle really badly if they ever lose any of that front three, as you could argue happened without Salah at the weekend, but especially Firmino, because he is so hard to replace. Origi, he works hard and he's scored some important goals, but he does not do anything like the job that Firmino does. And obviously, he's not going to come to Man United. I think you can't look much
Would
further.
you have Origi at Man United?
Origi?
Yeah.
No. I don't see what he'd offer that would be any better.
No, I was just wondering.
I'd have Firmino, but there's no chance we're going to get him.
Yeah, I mean, on the 9 front, Gary Neville can talk about more mobile strikers all he likes, but Harry Kane would be world class. I mean, properly world class in that team, because he's not a Firmino in the sense that he doesn't decide to play holding midfield 40% of the time, but he is similar to Firmino in the quality of his passing. He's got an extraordinary range of passing, and for me, he's the best striker in world football when it comes to switching the play. He does it a lot for England. He does it for Spurs, where he can play that raking, arced pass into the corner flag to a winger. Him as the middle point between Rashford and Martial. Yes, please. I would much rather that than Son.
Yeah, I agree, Johnny. I'm salivating at that prospect, and it's rare that you see a forward that is so good with both his back and his front to goal as Harry Kane. England are blessed to have him. Spurs are blessed to have him. I don't think he's realistically about to leave Spurs, certainly not in January or anything like that. Be interesting come the end of the season if Mauricio Pochettino's not there, if that might influence his decision. And even then, could Man United get him? Well, that is a story that potentially is going to rumble on a little bit. I'm sure the transfer rumour mill will be throwing that one out a few times in the future. But there'll be other clubs, and realistically, better clubs at the moment who are going to be linked to Harry Kane that might take his fancy. And I say that as a Man United fan.
I was about to say, how very dare you?
Well, Johnny, I wish that we could just, as we did in Roy Keane and Gary Neville's era, just say, right, he's the best striker. Let's have him. Doesn't happen anymore.
Well, with your rudeness about your own club, I've got half a mind to elbow you in the chin. In entirely unrelated news, coming up, we're talking the disgraced referee Jaco Piper with a entirely undisgraced former referee Rob Debney.
This is Love Sport.
Join me, Ewan Thomas and the Posh Boys here on Love Sport Drive this Friday as we count down to the Rugby World Cup semi-finals. All the build-up to England versus New Zealand and a massive weekend of football, all on Love Sport.
Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Full of skill, full of flair, full of desire. Fulham FC is full of fire.
Oh, what a goal!
Be there at Craven Cottage as Fulham continue their surge towards the top of the Sky Bet Championship. Watch the unmissable action live in SW6, home of London's original football club.
Absolutely brilliant.
Grab your tickets now at fulhamfc.com.
Can you save money on your car insurance? Chris did with a little help from a spokesmansaid.com. Getting real people, real savings.
I'm Chris from Leicestershire, a truck driver. I went on a spokesman's set, which was very straightforward and easy to use for an old git like myself, and saved over £300 on my car insurance.
Find quotes from over 100 leading insurance providers at a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Love sport.
Well, there are things to do in a World Cup quarter-final, a crucial World Cup quarter-final when you're representing your country, and there are things not to do. I would politely suggest that throwing an elbow into the jaw of an opponent is one of them. And there are things to do as the referee as well. The first, of course, is to show the offending player a red card. However, the thing not to do is probably to pose with fans of the rival team after the game, miming throwing that very same elbow. Now, we're joined on the line by Rob Debney, who's a former international rugby referee. Good afternoon, Rob. Thanks for joining us. What's your take? Jaco Piper has been left out of appointments for the semi-finals after posing for a photo with Wales fans in which he attempts to, shall we say, mirror the action of Vermeer. Should he have been left out for that? It seems a bit harsh.
Well, yeah, I think he should actually. It's just not acceptable. Referees are supposed to be ambassadors for the game, and there are ways to behave appropriately after a match, and unfortunately, this is not one of them. I applaud Jaco mingling with fans and spectators. That's definitely the right thing to do. Referees should be approachable. And that's one of the beauties of rugby, that you can talk to these people after the game and in a safe and friendly environment, unlike in other sports, for example. So I applaud him for trying to do the right thing. But ultimately, he's been very naive at best in mimicking this elbow, which is just unacceptable, really. And yeah, I think he should have been left out. Whether he would have been involved anyway, I don't know. Clearly, at the crunch end of the tournament, they're looking for the very best, and Jaco isn't quite up there.
Are referees in a difficult position, though, Rob? For you, how often do you see fans after a game, they've had a beer, they want to chat? Is it acceptable for a ref to get involved on a social level?
Well, it depends on what you mean involved. If you're going to be in the bar downing pints, standing on a table, dancing with them, then no. Having a beer with them and talking to them and socialising with them, yeah, it's absolutely acceptable. And I would certainly encourage that. Whether I would do it after the quarter-final of a World Cup when I've sent somebody off, I don't think that would be appropriate. But it is a fine line between being approachable to fans and spectators and being an ambassador for the game, and doing something which is very, very silly, really. So, as I said before, I should applaud him, really, for speaking to the fans. He could have very easily ignored them and gone out of his way not to speak to them. So he tried to do the right thing, but he just took it one step too far, and that really was just not acceptable.
Rob, could you explain to me what, as a referee, is so problematic about him doing this? Because the decision itself was not a complicated one, right? It's not like it's 50-50 and he's made a really tough call. The French player has elbowed a man in the face. He has sent him off, which he has to do. He's then mimed it. Okay, he's not saying, hey, I punished him, I won you the game. He's just kind of miming what happened. It wasn't borderline. So why is there such controversy about it?
Yeah, well, you're quite right. I mean, the decision was absolutely spot on. He had no alternative but to show that red card. It was absolutely the correct decision. I'd probably dispute your last point, actually. To me, that photograph says exactly that. Hey, I'm the guy that sent off your opponent. You won by 1 point. There was a controversial end to the game as well with the Welsh try. Was it forward? Was it not? That was a debatable decision as well. And had we not had this red card, that's probably the decision we would be talking about right now. It just looks wrong. The image is all wrong. Would the French want Yako to referee them ever again, thinking if he sends off one of our players, he's going to be mocking us after the game? Would England want that? Would New Zealand want that? You just don't do it. The referee has to be completely impartial before, during, and after the game. And I would just struggle to trust him now that I've seen him mocking sending off a player. If he sent off one of my players or one of my teammates or countrymen, is he going to be in the bar afterwards joking about it?
Yeah.
It's just not acceptable.
When you put it like that, Rob, I think you do see it a little bit differently as an England fan. If that was us that had been done against any time that Jaco Piper was our ref, you'd think, a little bit differently about it. You'd think exactly as you were saying. I think it was probably, as you've sort of said, something started with the best of intentions that he just maybe got a bit carried away with. Shall we look as well at a couple of the appointments for the semi-finals, obviously not including Jaco Piper, but they've announced who the refereeing teams are going to be. And starting with the England-New Zealand game, Nigel Owens is going to ref that game. I'm really pleased with that. Would you agree that he is going to be in a prime position if Wales aren't in the final to referee the final? Is he as good as there are at the moment in refereeing terms?
Yeah, well, there have been two outstanding referees at this tournament, and Nigel is absolutely one of them. And Wayne Barnes, of course, from England is the other. And as much as I want England to make it to the final and win, of course, if they don't get there, then absolutely I've got my fingers crossed for Wayne Barnes to referee the final. He's been the outstanding referee in this tournament. To answer your question about Nigel directly, he was the only referee for that England-New Zealand game. Because Wales were in the other semi-final, they had to have the next best referee, and Jerome Garces has got that appointment. None of the other referees really have come close to being as good as these three guys. So it was a no-brainer.
Why is Wayne Barnes an assistant in the Wales South Africa game then, Rob? If you think he's been the best referee at this tournament?
They don't like referees to referee the same team 2 weeks in a row. Okay. So this would suggest to me that World Rugby think New Zealand are going to beat England, and then they can appoint Wayne to the final.
Okay.
It's certainly frowned upon for a referee to referee the same team 2 weeks in a row. It does happen, but it's certainly not the done thing. So I suspect that they've got Wayne penciled into the final, and they're expecting it to be New Zealand versus somebody else, Wales or South Africa, of course.
I bet Eddie Jones has picked up on that then and is telling that to us. So I certainly hope he is. I think that would fire me up even more. I don't like that at all.
Absolutely. No, well, that would be an inference that you could make from those appointments for sure. But Nigel's definitely the man for the England-New Zealand game. And the good thing is that we all know what we're going to get with Nigel Owens. Most importantly, both teams know what they're going to get with Nigel Owens. So they'll prepare appropriately for him to referee them. They'll know to keep their P's and Q's to themselves and, mind their language and to be very respectful. And Nigel will do a good job. He's in the twilight of his career now, but history will prove him to be one of the outstanding referees of all time. He really is up there with the best of the best.
Rob, as a final point on Jaco Piper, how's he going to be feeling today? How will he look back on that photograph?
Yeah, there's been a lot of chat amongst fellow referees in the last few days, and I think the faceplant emoji has been passed around more than several times. I think when he looks back on the photo, he will quietly admit to himself, I shouldn't really have done that. And he's actually quite a personable guy. He's a nice guy, Jaco. All the referees at the tournament are actually genuinely nice guys. He was trying to do the right thing, and he just overstepped the mark. So he'll be feeling pretty gutted this morning. And, of course, he's missed out on any of the next round of appointments, and he certainly won't be involved in the final, I'm sure. So he'll be feeling a bit sore and he's let himself down. But I'm sure he'll bounce back. And I know he's apologised, and he'll mean that sincerely. He is a nice guy. So whether anything else happens, I don't know. But yeah, he'll be waking up this morning thinking, oh, what have I done?
He will indeed. Just taking refereeing out of the equation for a moment. Can England win the World Cup?
Yeah, they can. Absolutely, they can. I think they're getting better with each game. They're peaking at just the right time. And I think Eddie Jones has got them ticking over very nicely. And they can beat New Zealand this weekend. New Zealand haven't been perfect in this tournament. They've struggled themselves in a couple of the games. So England have got some momentum. Missing the French game will have helped them. They've had that extra week of rest. They have a full squad of fit, healthy players. I think the momentum is with England right now, and they can definitely go through the New Zealand game, win that game, and whoever they play the week after with Wales or South Africa. I mean, I'd love to see an England-Wales final. Who wouldn't? That would be an absolutely incredible fixture for the home unions and for domestic rugby in England and Wales. So fingers crossed that we can beat Wales by 1 point in the final. Why not?
It would be great to see. Rob, thank you for your time. Lovely to speak to you. Rob Debney there, former international rugby referee. Who wouldn't like to see an England versus Wales final? I suspect the population of New Zealand is the answer to that question.
It would be funny though, wouldn't it? It's a little bit like when you get a domestic Champions League final or something like that. You've got a competition open to so many countries, so many teams, and you could potentially end up with a final that interests such a tiny pocket.
One little island.
One little island. And what an incredible story it would be if it were to be England-Wales. All the history we've got, all the clashes we've had over so many years, there'd be something great about it. Equally, if it was something like England-South Africa or something like that, it would have a little bit more of a feel of a World Cup, I suppose. But look, if England are in it, I'm not going to be complaining. As I've said before, I'm confident that we got the beating of either of the other teams in the other semi-final. It's just those pesky Kiwis, pesky All Blacks we've got to get past. I shouldn't have called them that.
I was about to say, That's time
twice.
this show you've had a little Freudian slip. Go, you should not have said that. Why are you coming round to the All Blacks as a phrase?
I'm not coming round to it, Joe. It's a slip of the tongue.
Just
a slip of the tongue. No, I think maybe it is now time to start calling them the All Blacks to remind them of how good they are, the allure and the aura that they've got, and that will help to pile the pressure on them as Eddie Jones is trying to do. He is talking very specifically about how strong favourites they are, of course, trying to win a third World Cup in a row. I think he's playing it exactly right. I'm loving all the mind games, all the build-up in advance, and what I'm loving even more is watching England play like we did on Saturday against Australia. Play again like that, I think we've got a great chance.
Well, I love watching England play rugby well, but if there is one other thing I like almost as much, it is a world-class Christmas #1. Coming up, is Tyson Fury the man to produce one?
Giving your team a voice. Love Sport Radio.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Full of skill, full of flair, full of desire. Fulham FC is full of fire.
Oh, what a goal!
Be there at Craven Cottage as Fulham continue their surge towards the top of the Sky Bet Championship. Watch the unmissable action live in SW6, home of London's original football club.
Absolutely brilliant.
Grab your tickets now at fulhamfc.com.
When looking for the best possible deal for his car insurance, Jim went on a spokesmansaid.com and saved hundreds.
I'm Jim. I'm a radio presenter based in Glasgow. I couldn't believe how expensive the car insurance for our Citroen C4 Picasso was going to be from my existing insurer. I went on a Spokesman Said and saved an incredible £600. Just amazing.
Find quotes from over 100 leading insurance providers at a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you fall asleep at the wheel, you'll put your life in danger, and the lives of others as well. Before you feel tired, pull off the road into a services or other safe area. Drink some strong coffee, and take a quick nap while the caffeine kicks in.
If you're having a nap, you've left your lights on, sir.
Alright, cheers.
Think. Don't drive tired.
Last time I was in the UK, I met national treasure Mary Berry's grandmother, Elderberry.
This is Love Sport.
It still bangs, doesn't it? That is Can We Fix It, which staggeringly was Christmas #1 almost 20 years ago, the turn of the millennium 2000. The reason why we're focusing on... That's enough of that now, Guy. We fixed it. That's okay. The reason why we're focusing on Christmas #1s is because that is what Tyson Fury is after. Forget about those heavyweight titles. Forget about the scalp of Deontay Wilder. What he really wants is to top the charts, and he means business. We've got the news he's going to collaborate with none other than the pop hitmaker himself, Robbie Williams, on the song Bad Sharon, about an office party for Robbie Williams' new album. Now, it sounds like a parody headline, Guy. It is completely real. And actually, there's a potentially significant and important sporting angle here, because if we throw this into the mix with Tyson Fury's WWE wrestling deal, does he actually take boxing all that seriously anymore?
It's been strange, hasn't it? The last few weeks have only seemed to bring quite bizarre headlines, even by Tyson Fury standards, and then they're not related at all to boxing. This is a guy who, a month or so ago, had a heavyweight title fight victory over Otto Wallin in Las Vegas, and I know it caused him, serious damage to that eye. That eye wound is still healing, in spite of the fact that he's getting into a WWE ring, I think, next week in Saudi Arabia, of all places. So, I guess we knew he was going to be out of the boxing room for a little while, but to have two such massive departures from what you'd have thought would have been his biggest priority at the moment, having spent a long time out of the sport and talked about the difficulties he had out of the sport before. I mean, possibly, Christmas #1 collaboration with Robbie Williams and a bit of a dalliance with WWE are going to bring him more happiness than what he was up to in his, if you like, first enforced break from the sport. But it's hard to imagine. This doesn't seem like the activity of a man who, as we expect him to do, is going to get in a ring with Deontay Wilder on February the 22nd somewhere in America, probably Las Vegas next year, which is not that long away. We're talking about 3-4 months away. Why is he messing around with this? He doesn't need to do this. He doesn't need the money. He certainly doesn't need the publicity or the fame. What a ridiculous stunt and waste of time. And I'm not even talking about his WWE fight in Saudi Arabia.
But it must be very hard, mustn't it, to be famous on the scale of Tyson Fury and not do anything ridiculous, because he must get so many offers, like, do you want to do a Christmas song with Robbie Williams? Like, do you want to get into a wrestling ring in Saudi Arabia versus Brock Lesnar or whoever it's going to be, Braun Williams.
Braun something.
Strautman. And you just think, how many ridiculous offers does Tyson Fury get given every single day that he says no to?
Yeah, a lot, but I don't think that makes it right that you say yes to some. Look, I sound like a massive killjoy now. I sound like a massive killjoy.
12 million.
Yeah, and I know how fake it is, and they'll be getting about no more than 2 meters away from his eye at any point. But I just think, Johnny, Tyson Fury has won people over. Let's be honest, his public profile now compared to where it was at the back end of 2015 when he beat Vladimir Klitschko in that famous fight where he took the heavyweight world title. He was almost a reluctantly praised champion. He'd said a lot of controversial things. He didn't fight excitingly in the ring. He then had quite a long spell out of the sport. Remember, he didn't fight for 2 years after that. He had problems with drink, problems with depression, problems with drugs as well. And he wasn't a particularly popular figure. His comeback and his rise as a popular figure, a cult figure almost, has been quite quick and quite recent. And I'm not against it, because there are a lot of great things that he's done. He's done impressive things in the boxing ring. Obviously, that first fight with Deontay Wilder was just incredible. He should have won it, having been out of the sport for the best part of a year and a half. And yet he came away with a draw. He had that bizarre fight against Otto Wallin where he suffered that horrible eye injury and managed to come through that. He's got another fight against Deontay Wilder, as I say, coming up in not that long. That could be the defining fight of his career. If there is any suggestion that he doesn't get the win that he is so sure he's going to get because he's been messing around with Robbie Williams and Brooks Strautman or whatever he's called in Saudi Arabia, then he will deserve every bit of criticism that comes his way. And that's all I'm saying. Yes, he might be able to get in the ring with him and win, whether he's been recording Bob the Builder or training relentlessly in ways that don't involve getting his eye hit. But I just think, does he need to be doing it? He'll be a big star in retirement as well. And as they always say, you're a long time retired.
But this ties in, I think, with the current narrative around Premier League footballers, espoused consistently by Roy Keane, also picked up on by our very own Martin Allen. generally a kind of older school football fan who criticised the likes of Paul Pogba, the likes of Jesse Lingard for their social media presence and for having other businesses and so on and so forth. And I just think it's time that we got with the times. There is no reason why doing a couple of days in a recording booth will actually have any major impact on Tyson Fury's ability to have a boxing match. And in a week where we've seen the news that Cristiano Ronaldo earns more from being an Instagram influencer than he does from his Juventus salary, why should we be expecting these people to limit themselves to being professional athletes?
Johnny, I think you've sort of just referred to it there. Yes, that is ludicrous with Ronaldo, but Cristiano Ronaldo will be earning absolutely seismic amounts, monumental, astronomical, whatever word you want to use, amounts for playing football. Not only is it an era where, yes, you can earn X amount from doing some charity single stunt, or you can earn it from being on Instagram, or you can earn it from getting a WWE ring. Maybe Cristiano Ronaldo will be the next person to do it. But equally, they're getting paid more than ever to get in the boxing ring, to go on the football pitch. These guys are making so much money that they could set themselves up for life 100 times over, even if they don't work a day in their lives after the age of 35. Tyson Fury, as I say, will be able to do Christmas #1 singles for 30, 40 years of his life, assuming that nothing, terrible happens to him in the next few years, as will Cristiano Ronaldo. Not that Cristiano Ronaldo's performances, it would be fair to say, are ever affected. And that's what I always say. There are a few examples in every sport. There's Cristiano Ronaldo. I think Harry Kane's one to a degree. He doesn't hit that same level, but I think his dedication is second to very, very few footballers and sports people. And I think that you always would surely look back at the end of your career and only regret things that you would have known at the time might not have been a great call. Some things you don't know what the outcome's going to be, but there are some things like messing around on Instagram if you're Jesse Lingard, or ordering too many cars if you're Dele Alli, or doing Christmas #1s if you're Tyson Fury, that you could say, I could sort of have seen that coming, or someone around me could have seen that coming and warned me about it. And they're the things that I think are different and people do deserve a bit of criticism for.
Yeah.
We like Tyson Fury because of what he does in a boxing ring.
That's true, but I think we are hypocrites when we talk about these sportsmen and what they should and shouldn't do, because this argument that you earn a lot from boxing, you earn a lot from football, you don't need more. Yeah, fair enough. But if you were earning 40 million quid a year and someone said, get in a wrestling ring for a 90% fake fight with a man with overinflated muscles and we'll pay you another 20 million, would you do it?
I don't know if I would.
You would.
I don't know if I would.
We all would. Who are we kidding? 20 million, 12 million is the case he's getting, right? So we'll run with that number. 12 million quid to do something which is basically jumping off a trampoline wearing a leotard. Yes, please. No one says no to that. No one.
Things can go wrong, Johnny. What happens if he slips over and cuts his eye open?
What happens What if he does that walking down the street?
Yeah, but you're not going to get criticised for walking down the street, is my point. If you do it in a WWE fight, it's different, isn't it?
It is. I just think we need to have more open minds about what these guys can and can't do with their time, with their profile. And we talk the whole time about not wanting sanitised sport, not wanting sanitised people. And Tyson Fury is certainly not sanitary in any sense, because we get the bad comments as well as the amusing comments. And it's important we recognise them, as you did.
Do you not think that you could argue with Tyson Fury? What I think a lot of people like about him is his irreverence. It's his lack. He's not conventional in any way. And I think that he is becoming a little bit of the celebrity culture. Do you know what I mean? A little bit almost like Bradley Wiggins did. He was this big rebel and he had the sideburns and he sort of was a bit cheeky chappy to everyone. And then he's gone on the jump and he's done a book and he's tried to be a rower and he's sort of doing anything to keep relevant. And I feel as well, and I know these people do it because they have their own issues. I'm not sort of saying they're doing it purely for a laugh, but Tyson Fury, you think, why would you be interested in doing a Christmas #1? You've always talked about being the greatest heavyweight fighter on the planet. You are at an actual stage where you can prove that. You are months away from proving that beyond any doubt, and yet you're messing around with stuff like this. I want him to beat Deontay Wilder in February, but I want him to make sure he has the fight in the first place, and then I want to make sure he's in the top condition to win it. And I
want him to do both. I want him to win the fight.
And I like Robbie Williams as well, by the way, so I think it could be a good song. It would be really frustrating if the song's good, but it costs him the World Heavyweight title.
I hope he goes out there, having got a Christmas #1. I hope he wins the World Heavyweight title, and then they play The Kids Are All Right by Robbie Williams and Kylie Minogue, and it will hammer his point spectacularly home.
Love sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
Full of skill, full of flair, full of desire. Fulham FC is full of fire.
Oh, what a goal!
Be there at Craven Cottage as Fulham continue their surge towards the top of the Sky Bet Championship. Watch the unmissable action live in SW6, home of London's original football club.
Absolutely brilliant.
Grab your tickets now at fulhamfc.com.
This is Lionel, another very happy person who saved themselves money at aspokesmansaid.com.
Hi, I'm Lionel from Peacehaven. I took note of what the spokesman said and I saved £484 per year on my energy, and I recommend everybody does the same.
Aspokesmansaid.com. Getting real people, real savings. Compare, switch and save with aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Exercise. It doesn't have to mean Lycra or a fancy gym membership. All you need is 10 minutes and you. Because a regular 10-minute brisk walk is a great way to get more active. Whether that's walking to the shops or getting off the bus to stop early. Picking up the pace and getting your heart pumping can make a real difference to your health. So, to see how much brisk walking you're doing and how you can fit more into your day, download the free Active 10 app, because there's only one you.
We got lots to come on the show. We're going to be talking to England cricketer Tamal Mills. Sussex bowler has been drafted for the Southern Brave for next year's 100. We're going to be talking to him about the controversial new cricketing format, getting his take. His outfit, by the way, tipped as one of the very strongest following that draft. We're also talking Spurs. We'll be joined by Charlie Eccleshare, football writer for The Athletic, who covers Tottenham. And we're going to have some Champions League team news for you. Of course, a huge game for Spurs against Red Star Belgrade. Can they do the business? First of all, news.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 5, Boris Johnson says he'll push for a general election if the Commons votes against the proposed timetable for his Brexit deal. MPs are furious. They've only got 3 days to debate the bill. Later, they'll decide whether to reject that schedule. Lib Dem leader Jo Swinson says she can't rely on what the Prime Minister says.
He is a man who is prepared to say anything and sell out anyone if it is in his own personal interest. He cannot be trusted and no one shall be fooled.
The PM will need a 2/3 majority in the Commons in order for an early election to take place. The American woman who fled the UK after a fatal crash has asked to be interviewed by British police officers in the US under caution. Anne Sakoulas claimed diplomatic immunity following the death of Harry Dunn in Northamptonshire. 5 people, including twin babies, have been injured in Norway after an ambulance was stolen by an armed man in Oslo. The suspect drove off and hit a family before police opened fire and managed to arrest him. This lady was in her flat when it happened.
I heard a lot of noise outside and there were a lot of police lights, so I checked what was going on and could see an ambulance driving full speed, and I heard a bang. It hit a street sign and continued to drive.
Police say there's no information to suggest the incident was related to terrorism. The UK's lifted a ban on direct flights to Sharm el-Sheikh following improvements to security at airports. Services were suspended 4 years ago after an Islamic State bombing of a Russian airliner. An Israeli startup that promotes homegrown marijuana says it signed Snoop Dogg as a brand ambassador. The rapper is well known for backing the use of the drug. And Geraint Thomas says it was surreal to meet the Duke of Cambridge as he collected his OBE. The 2018 Tour de France winner has been recognised for his services to cycling. The pair also chatted about the Rugby World Cup. That's the latest. I'm Will Rowe.
Love Sport Radio on digital radio, online, mobile, and smart speaker. This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good evening, you're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow and Guy Watts. Your top stories this afternoon. Arsenal captain Granit Xhaka lashes out at Patrice Evra over the Frenchman's comments that Arsenal are mentally weak. They're absolutely right, by the way, and they came after last night's 1-0 defeat to Sheffield United. Mauricio Pochettino has admitted his team are under pressure ahead of their Champions League game against Red Star Belgrade tonight, while Eddie Jones is insisting that all the pressure is on New Zealand ahead of England's Rugby World Cup semi-final on Saturday. It's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. We are, of course, talking Tottenham. Rumblings of discomfort in North London. Pochettino just starting to grow under pressure, and this game tonight is now very, very important. We're joined on the line by Charlie Eccleshare, who's a football writer for The Athletic, covering Spurs. Evening, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. How important is it for Spurs to get those 3 points tonight?
Yeah, it's really important. The whole, could change the whole mood of the place, which, the last few weeks has been pretty miserable. I think it's probably just about the lowest morale's been at Spurs since, the early months of Pochettino's first season, where he had a bit of a sticky patch. So, yeah, they need a boost. And, especially, I think on the weekend, people thought maybe it was going to come them, at home against the bottom team, Watford. They were actually lucky to even get a draw then. So, yeah, they need something. They need it quickly. So, yeah, tonight's very, very big.
In terms of the kind of team that Pochettino will name, normally you would look at this kind of game and think about rotation, but can he afford that luxury?
I think it's the other way around almost at the moment, that he may rotate, as we would normally think of it, in the sense of making changes, but it's more he just doesn't really know what his best team is anymore. So he made, I think, 7 changes on the weekend, which is the most the Spurs team's ever made between 2 Premier League games. And I'd expect he'll probably make a few again this evening, but more just trying to find a formula that works, because it's not really working at the moment. I think we may see Eriksen come back in. He's fit again. Would be one of them. Maybe Van Foyth will get a chance. But, something needs to change. So I don't think we'll see the same team as we did on the weekend.
We're hearing suggestions that there could be empty seats there in the stadium tonight. If that is the case, does that actually show us anything about the state of the club?
I think there are a lot of issues there. I did a piece on this, actually. One of them is there are about 3,000 extra seats because the away fans are banned. So that means they had more to sell. There are issues. Some of the fans think the tickets are overpriced. And I think there is a degree of apathy. But these games aren't always that easy to sell. It seems strange because you think, Champions League at the brand new stadium would be very exciting. But they have had issues with these sort of games before. But I mean, pricing is one of the things that fans are annoyed about. They think tickets are too expensive for a game against Red Star Belgrade.
In terms of the general feeling about Pochettino, are the fans still on side?
It's difficult. It is getting quite divided, and it reminds me, it's not quite at that stage yet, but I don't think it'll be too long before we almost get to that late Wenger period at Arsenal where it becomes very divided, where some are completely saying, look, he absolutely deserves to be given time and money and whatever he wants in recognition of what he's done for the club. Others are saying it's gone too far, and they don't blame him necessarily, but it's just not working, and the easiest thing to change is the manager. So I don't know. I don't know where it goes over the next few weeks, but I was amazed, even a couple of weeks ago, fans were starting to say this, because for me, I think Pochettino's just done such an amazing job. It really surprised me that any fans would want him out, but increasingly it's heading that way. I think people do think it's just broken and they need a change.
Yeah, I agree with you, Charlie. I can't believe that Spurs fans would actually kind of call for a manager who's done what he has done for that club to leave. But that is, I guess, the way of it. We're talking a lot today about Arsenal and how, obviously, with Emery having done a lot less for the Gunners, but he is coming under pressure quite early on, when I would say he hasn't done anything like a terrible job that you would expect if a manager was under that sort of pressure. Looking at the Spurs squad, you referred to the fact that he doesn't know his best 11. You look at a lot of the players involved, and you think it's pretty much public knowledge that Pochettino doesn't rate a certain player or didn't want him to still be at the club. And I've seen he's talked a little bit about January signings, which, when you're talking about that in late September, early October, is a bit of a worrying state of affairs, isn't it? But do you think it is a genuine possibility that Spurs will look to spend some money in January and get rid of some players?
I think they have to, because there's such a big rebuilding job, and they can't do it in just one window. They can't wait till the summer and make 6 or 7 signings and get rid of 6, 7 players, because that's just such a big churn at one time. I think it needs to be done over 2 or 3 windows, and I know January's a tough one for getting value, and that's why Spurs, especially under Daniel Levy, have been kind of allergic to making signings then. But that's what the scouts are there for, to kind of unearth gems, and Pochettino needs some rabbits pulled out of the hat, because this squad desperately needs a refresh, unless he goes. It's got to be one of those two things.
Yeah, I suppose so. And one, I guess, player who they won't be wanting to sell at all, probably ever, Harry Kane. And I only ask this because of what was said on Sunday on Sky by Roy Keane, and there was maybe a little bit of tongue in his cheek when he said it, but it does make you think a little bit. There's lots to it. Would Harry Kane go to Man United, but would he go at all? And do you think it is extremely linked to Pochettino's future, what Harry Kane does in his future? Do you think he would leave Spurs if Pochettino was still the manager? Do you think he'd leave Spurs at all, ever?
I think at the end of the season he will review where things are, because he hasn't won anything, and for a player of his ability, that is kind of crazy. He's performed such miracles. So I think another season of not winning anything, and whether Poch is there or not, he might well consider his future. As hard as that is to imagine, because he's so synonymous with Tottenham, but I don't think he'll want to go on in this position for too much longer, to be honest.
Charlie, obviously the powers that be at Tottenham recognise the extraordinary talent of Mauricio Pochettino. They're going to want to hold on to him if they can. But how far in the Premier League table would Spurs have to slip for Levy to sack Poch?
So in this situation, typically, it's once a team looks like they're not going to qualify for the top 4 that chairman will act. I mean, I think this is an exceptional case in that Pochettino has so much goodwill in the bank because of everything he's done. And I think if it were just up to him, I think he might almost say, okay, this season isn't working out, but I'm going to give him another chance. Given all the pressure, though, that there'll be from supporters and financially and all of that, I think if it got to a point, let's say around Christmas or soon after, when the top 4 looked out of reach, then I think he might be giving it serious thought. But we don't know if that will happen, because it's surprising, for all that Spurs are in crisis, in inverted commas. I think they're 5 points off the top 4. It's not insurmountable. But I think that that's normally the point at which chairmen start giving it serious thought, is when qualification for Champions League and all the financial implications of that, when that looks likely.
This one is going to run and run. Charlie, great to speak to you. Thank you for your time. Charlie Eccleshare there, who's a football writer for The Athletic covering Spurs. The money angle is an interesting one, Guy, because I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans on Twitter for our other crisis in North London saying, listen, sacking Unai Emery will cost the club £6 million. failing to qualify for the Champions League will cost the club £50 million. If you act fast enough, it looks expensive, but you save yourself an awful lot of money.
Yeah, but the angle with Pochettino and Spurs is completely different. The amounts are on a different scale. Emery, I imagine, is earning probably less than what Arsene Wenger was earning, and I don't think that he was on an extortionate amount by modern manager standards, partly because he'd been there so long. And yet Mauricio Pochettino is at the other end of that scale. He's on £8.5 million a year. He signed a 5-year deal, just over a year ago. He's got 4 years or so to run on that. The figure that we hear talked about, mainly with Man United being linked to him when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's been under intense pressure, is 30 plus million quid that Daniel Levy is going to want every penny paid of if another club comes calling. And equally, if Mauricio Pochettino is to be on the receiving end of his P45 before time, he's going to want as much of that as he can. And we know how tight Daniel Levy is with his purse strings. And 30 million is a hell of a different proposition to 5 million for a club that has been so, shall we say, careful with its money as Spurs, for good reason, with the new stadium over the last few years. To go a year and a half without signing a single player, to then, just blow 30 million quid on getting rid of a manager who has done so much for the club would seem extremely questionable, I would think, on the surface of it. You would have to have an extremely enticing-looking candidate lined up to come in to convince yourself, I think, as Daniel Levy, and the fans, almost as importantly, that was the right call.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, but I was really interested by Charlie's answer to my last question, which was, of course, how far down that table do they have to slip before Levy thinks about sacking Poch? I was expecting him to say 18th. He said 5th.
Yeah.
And I think that does rather show the cutthroat nature of the business. Pochettino can be as brilliant as he likes. He can have 6 staggering years for Tottenham Hotspur where he turns them from mid-table also-rans into Champions League finalists. The moment he slips up, that counts for nothing.
Well, there's an irony to it, isn't there, Johnny? The man that turns Tottenham into Champions League regulars to get fired for essentially missing out on that competition, I'm sure it wouldn't be lost on Poch. You could equally argue if they would be using the wrong standards to do that. I thought it was interesting, that Charlie said that, because that was, of course, famously when David Moyes got the chop at Man United all those years ago, when it became mathematically impossible to reach the top 4. And realistically, football hasn't changed that much. I certainly feel like you could imagine that with Unai Emery at Arsenal. If there were to be a point in this season where top 4 looked beyond reach, and it was even the case, arguably, with Jose Mourinho last year, that defeat to Liverpool left United 11 points off the top 4, then that would be a time to act. I think with Poch, it's got to be different. There has got to be, there may not be a lot of loyalty and a lot of affection or emotion left in football at the top level, but if there is any, Pochettino will have enough in the bank to stay there, I think, especially given how much it'll cost to fire him, unless we really are talking about sliding to 17th or 18th in the table. I'd be very surprised if Mauricio Pochettino isn't still there at the end of the season, unless he decides to up sticks. But would you walk away from a contract that guarantees you 30 million quid over 4 years?
I don't understand why any manager resigns ever.
Well,
unless you've had some sort of serious mental health breakdown. I genuinely don't see why you'd walk away. I would sit there on my thumbs going, sack me. Go on, blink first. Sack me.
An actor, a journalist, and a comedian walk into a bar, and they're all whining about Donald Trump.
This is Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
It's cancer, they said. My first thought, let's just say it wasn't money, but time off work for treatment and trips to the hospital, paying the rent, and. The cost of living doesn't go away just because you're living with cancer, and Macmillan can help with that too. My advice? Take their advice. Soon as. I did.
Macmillan, right there with you. Call now or search Macmillan Money Worries.
AsSpokesmanSaid.com is a leading price comparison website that allows you to compare every energy tariff on the market in seconds. We have more deals than any other comparison website offering energy prices, and our impartial independent switching service is free of charge. Nearly 50% of UK households have switched bills, and there are hundreds to be saved. Visit AsSpokesmanSaid.com, as recommended in The Guardian, The Times and The Sun. at spokesmansaid.com.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
This is Love Sport.
Pep Guardiola always demands the best, and he particularly demands the best when he's got something in his throat, or indeed when there is a TV camera on him. Now, for the first time really in the last couple of years, he does need more from his Manchester City players, and he is saying to them, step it up a notch. I need more improvement from you. I need you to take it to the next level. That's something that's been echoed by one of his players, Raheem Sterling, who was asked if he could be put in that same bracket as Messi, as Ronaldo, and he said very charmingly, I thought, listen, if I score 60 goals a season for the next 15 years, then we can have the conversation. Actually,
well, he's not wrong, is he?
He's not wrong at all. But from the Pep point of view, they are 6 points adrift, second in the Premier League. Is it reasonable for him to be going, come on lads, gee yourselves up?
Maybe not. It's difficult, isn't it? Because when the standards are so high for so long, we talked about this with Harry Kane's comment in relation to Spurs' start. The difference is that Spurs have actually been rubbish this year. Man City have been a pretty decent second in the Premier League. They've won 2 out of 2 in the Champions League. It's far from a crisis, but when you've taken 198 points in 2 seasons out of a possible 228, you're obviously going to be judged by different standards. So I guess he has a point. I just wonder a little bit, and I've not obviously been a top footballer. I know that may be a surprise to you, Johnny, and to people listening at home, but I've not been a player in any sport at that level. But I do wonder if, because I can't seriously imagine the players have made a sort of conscious choice to slacken off a bit, to not try so hard in training or run as far in matches. If you would think, if you read these comments, having just seen them play well at the weekend, narrow the gap to Liverpool, and have a good chance of almost sealing Champions League knockout qualification tonight, if you think, oh, come on, Gaffer, lay off us a little bit, cut us a bit of slack. We've had no centre-backs for the last month. They had Rodri and Fernandinho start at centre-back against Crystal Palace and put in one of their best performances of the season. You wouldn't exactly feel like he was justified in saying, it's time to pull your finger out, would you?
I think you kind of would. If you're looking at the money they spend, I mean, Pep doesn't think of centre-halves as centre-halves, and he doesn't think of midfielders as midfielders. Obviously, you, I, and 99% of other football fans in the country look at that Crystal Palace lineup on Saturday and go, you're not playing any centre-backs, Pep. There aren't any centre-backs, Pep. What are you doing? He has always thought that a good defensive midfield player can play at the back. So he will have considered that lineup completely run-of-the-mill. He'll have gone, Fernandinho and Rodri, defensive
I think he once said,
ball players.
He once said, my ideal team would be 11 midfielders. So he got almost close to his ideal team, you could say.
Well, exactly, and he will not think of that as a problem. So in that sense, he's not going to have given himself any leeway in this defensive injury crisis. He won't have given his players any leeway, and he won't be looking at it and going, well, we were missing Laporte, so of course we dropped points. He'll have gone, we are an elite outfit. We should win every single game.
By the way, tonight could be a really good game. They're playing Atalanta, and you would expect City to win, but these are the 2 highest scoring teams in their respective leagues since the start of last season. Atalanta are a really exciting team, and of course, Gianpiero Gasperini, the manager, is someone that Pep Guardiola, greatly admires. So, there could be some really good football on show.
I hate those managerial love-ins.
It gets a little bit...
You're so clever. No, you're so clever.
He's so brilliant. He has inspired me. Yeah, leave it out. Just get on with it. No, I know what you mean, Johnny, but at the same time, I find it quite revealing when you hear Pep Guardiola, for example, talk about managers that he admires and who younger managers have looked up to, because I do think it gives you an insight into kind of not just the type of football, which is the obvious thing that you link it with that they want to be, but what kind of teams they want to have in terms of the character and what kind of managers are they going to be and how they deal with the media and their own players and all that sort of thing as well.
Guardiola, by the way, has a quote and a picture from Marcelo Bielsa on the wall of his office.
Well, there you go. And you wouldn't have thought, if you didn't know much about football at all, if you were asked to sort of identify who Pep Guardiola, rightly said to be the greatest coach in the world, his idol would be, you would not pit the manager of the bloke who is in charge of the second or third best team in England's second division. But that turns out to be the case. And that is why I think it can be quite interesting. I don't like particularly listening to them all gush praise about one another, but I think it is quite interesting. So, yeah, I think it could be a good game tonight. Benjamin Mendy going to have to start, it looks like, for the second time in a week, which, of course, he's barely done. He's barely played twice in a season the last couple of years. But maybe more significantly, John Stones and Otamendi, most of the papers saying they're likely to start. And having had no centre-backs, recognised centre-backs against Palace, that is, you would say, a significant thing. Although, given how they played against Norwich, those two, he might say I'd rather have Rodri and Fernandinho.
Yeah, Fernandinho in particular has looked superb. I loved watching Ben Mendy against Palace because it was the most Benjamin Mendy performance I think I've ever seen, where he would get forward, lose the ball, get overexcited, go sprinting into central midfield, and you could see Pep just going, Benjamin, get back to left back. And actually, Raheem Sterling ended up playing left back for large portions of the game and did brilliantly.
Yeah, Benjamin Mendy doesn't have an awful lot of sort of positional sense, does he? Another Champions League news, breaking news this afternoon, actually. Mo Salah is going to be fit for Liverpool's trip to Genk tomorrow night. Trent Alexander-Arnold, though, is not. There's another injury as well. I think Joel Matip might have been ruled out of that game. Remember how poor Liverpool's away record in Champions League group stage matches is since the start of last season? Off the top of my head, it's 4 out of 4 games that they have lost. They lost to Napoli this year and last year. They lost to Red Star Belgrade away from home in the group stage last year. And, of course, PSG. And I know they beat Red Bull Salzburg, RB Salzburg, at home in their last game, but it was a little bit of a hairy one with the miracle of Istanbul Red Bull, almost happening, giving away that 3-goal lead. But I think, although that's tomorrow, that'll be well worth having a proper look at because they are the European champions, and for them to stutter or possibly even to miss out on the knockout stages would be a big, big blow. And you could argue it helped them with their title challenge, but I always argue differently. I think that you are in a better position to challenge for silverware full stop if you're going for multiple bits of silverware.
If you're in the Champions League and you finish third in your group, you get knocked out of the competition, but not out of Europe. You go into the Europa League in the knockout stages. If you finish fourth, you are out on your bum. That's it. Game over. For these elite teams, for a Spurs or a Liverpool, would they rather finish third and go into the Europa League or fourth and just have a freer schedule?
Yeah, that's a more difficult one because you can't pretend that the Europa League is on the same level. No. I'm thinking back to the days when Man United or Chelsea or occasionally Liverpool would be regularly going, Arsenal occasionally, many years ago, would be challenging for the big trophies on multiple fronts. The Europa League or the UEFA Cup, it doesn't quite rank on that level. So would the managers and the players be as up for it and therefore using it to spur themselves on? Possibly. I think it depends on the manager. We know how importantly, Unai Emery, for example, takes the Europa League. Would Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp share that? Perhaps not. But then Pep Guardiola, as we've just been talking about, has such high standards that I don't think he lets his players slacken off very often at all, does he? It'd be an interesting one. I feel like it's a bit like, when they give out a prize for coming second bottom in the pub quiz to stop people deliberately not trying at all. But there is supposedly some incentive for not coming absolute rock bottom. But I think you're right. I think a lot of teams would rather say, right, well, that's us done with it. We'll move on and out. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see. Did you see the story, just looking across the pond, Johnny? Not about David Beckham, about Odell Beckham Jr., one of the more famous NFL players. He's landed himself in a bit of hot water, not for the first time in his career, or the second time in his career, or even the third, fourth, or fifth. He's just been given the 13th fine of his career. And if you don't know American football, you're probably thinking, well, this guy's probably 35 years old, coming towards the end of his career. He's 26. He's got 13 fines already. He's only been in the league about 4 years.
But this one is farcical. It is absolutely farcical.
What's it for?
He's called it ridiculous, and he is spot on. He has been
I bet he's called it something else in private.
Well, I'm sure. $14,037. That is 10,848 English pounds. On the grounds that his pants, that's trousers, failed to cover the knee area during a game. NFL rules state that pants must be worn over the entire knee area. He said 14k for some pants that are not going to protect me from anything. He posted the letter from the NFL on his Instagram story saying this is ridiculous. You wonder whether there could be another fine coming. The NFL, meanwhile, say the uniform rules help to protect players from injury. Covering your knees? Really?
Seriously, what a load of nonsense.
Maintain competitive balance. covering your knees? Really? Create a professional appearance covering your... You get the idea. And protect the league's business partnerships. It feels like they've gone
by covering
full...
his knees.
Well, this is the thing. It feels like they've gone kind of full Victorian prudish and gone, oh, no, put those knees away, young man. What? Why?
Absolutely ridiculous,
Why?
isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Some of these leagues, these sporting organisations, they are so ludicrously run by such, clearly jobs-worthy people or such officious people. You just think, how on earth has that been actually authorised? You know what I mean? There's clearly someone who's spotted that and gone, technically, that should be a fine. I'll take that to my boss and make sure that gets ticked off. The boss has then gone, yeah, all right, that does seem okay. And then there's probably one more person to clear it, and they've gone, yeah, definitely, that's what we need to do. We need to find this guy who's on probably, £500,000 a week, 10,000 quid for showing his knees in a game of American football. Seems absolutely crazy.
When we're talking about knees on a sporting pitch and whether they should be covered or not, I'd be interested to get your views, Guy, on the very, very, very contentious issue of high socks and low socks in a footballing context. Of course, most players wear their socks up to a standard level. You cover the shin pad, it's under the knee. We get a little bit of sultry lower thigh in the mix, but nothing excessive, a la Alexis Sanchez. Some, Jack Grealish, for example, roll them round their ankles and look absolutely ridiculous. I think Thomas Muller is another one. But you get others who go for the kind of stocking look, where the socks go right up to the shorts, and that looks rubbish as well.
Yeah, not for me, Clive. I don't know, when I was a kid, when I was a lad, I felt like everyone wore their socks to the normal height, which is to say just above a normal shin pad and just below the knee. We're allowed to show knees, of course, here in soccer, in British football, and how lucky we are to have that. But the only player who I can think of bucking that trend was Thierry Henry, who was allowed, as far as most people are concerned, to buck any trend you liked, including the accepted wisdom of deciding to win games as a football manager. And he'd wear his socks like way up above his knee, wouldn't he? He seemed to not understand that you could just fold them back over and it would be much more comfortable. You didn't have to keep pulling them up every few minutes. But now everyone is either pulling them up high or down low. I don't get it. What's wrong with just the normal? And also, why would you play? We see some bad tackles go in for some big players in the Premier League. Why would you risk playing with such tiny shin pads? I know it's not probably going to save you from a horror challenge, but they must give you so little protection. What Jack Grealish wears is to be almost not worth wearing.
But is there a question?
And he's the sort of player who gets fouled, most foul player in the Championship last year.
It's true, but those fouls are largely, I think, on the kind of back of the leg, on the back of the ankle. If you're getting properly two-footed, you're getting two-footed. I think he'll be getting the raking stud on the calf more. I don't know, is there a question with the shin pads, the smaller shin pad that is, of first touch? Or, if you strike it with your ankle.
I'd certainly have a better first touch if I used a shin pad to control the football than my foot. That's true.
But you know what I mean? If you want to be using that whole lower part of your leg to keep a football within arm's reach, as it were, then perhaps there is a minor advantage to be had in a smaller shin pad.
Yeah, maybe. I've heard about players. Christian Pulisic is one when he's actually allowed on the football pitch. He wears boots that are a size smaller than his foot size because he finds that gives him better first touch. I know that if I wear shoes that are too small for me, I just lose all feeling in them, which makes my already pretty poor first touch almost non-existent. And so that seems questionable. But some people do that. There are all sorts of biomechanics that go into these decisions. So maybe there's a bit more to it than we think. I just think that you look ridiculous if you're Jack Grealish. You look ridiculous if you're Thierry Henry. At least if you're Thierry Henry, you're Thierry Henry. No disrespect to Jack Grealish, who's not quite at that level yet, in spite of what some Villa fans would have you believe.
Spare a thought, though, for Odell Beckham Jr., who has lost 10 grand over getting his knees out in public. I don't know, I find the shoes too small argument baffling, really baffling in this modern era of technology of sporting shoe. We've talked a lot about the brilliant trainers that Eliud Kipchoge wore for his marathon record attempt, although it wasn't official. Christian Pulisic, I swear both Nike and Adidas are making these kind of foot moulded boots now where you don't have laces and they just slide on. I'd have thought we're beyond wearing shoes too small for you. Anyway, we are talking cricket coming up. We're very fortunate. We're going to be joined on the line by Tamal Mills, England and Sussex bowler. He's also been drafted in the 100. We'll be getting his take on the new format next.
Love Sport. Join me, Ewan Thomas and the Posh Boys here on Love Sport Drive this Friday as we count down to the Rugby World Cup semi-finals. All the build-up to England versus New Zealand and a massive weekend of football, all on Love Sport.
Love Sport.
Have you had enough of extortionate energy bills? A spokesman said could help you find the cheapest energy deals on the market. Don't take our word for it. There's hundreds of spokesman said customers who've saved big. Brian from Derbyshire saved £400 on his energy bills, and Tony from Northampton saved a massive £2,800 on his gas and electric. A spokesmansaid.com, the leading price comparison site where you can switch to the cheapest energy tariffs on the market in just minutes.
Thespokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
There are fewer than 10 days to get ready for Brexit. Find out what you need to do to prepare now at gov.uk/Brexit.
Think the energy price cap will save you money? Think again. You could be saving a lot more on cheaper energy tariffs. Price comparison site A Spokesman Said will show you just how much money you could be saving against your current tariff. Don't throw away your hard-earned money to the energy companies. Check out aspokesmansaid.com and you could switch to cheaper bills in minutes.
Thespokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
I love my brother. We do fun things like playing together. I like having hugs with Freddie. Freddie gives the best hugs. Freddie used to be very poorly, and the doctor said he might need a new liver. Then one day, a very nice person gave their liver to Freddie. It was amazing. We were so happy. Now he's around to give me more hugs than ever.
Tell your family you want to save lives. To find out more, visit organdonation.nhs.uk.
Putin is a great singer. I love him in that musical, Putin on the Ritz.
This is Love Sport. Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow, and Guy Watts, who has all your latest sporting headlines and weather.
I do, Johnny. Yeah, Manchester United have issued an indefinite ban to a supporter who allegedly racially abused Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold. The incident occurred during Sunday's 1-1 Premier League draw. This individual is not welcome at Old Trafford, United said in a statement. The ban, though, is subject to an appeal. Mo Salah is back in the Liverpool squad for tomorrow's Champions League tie with Genk. The forward missed Sunday's 1-1 draw with United in the Premier League. However, Trent Alexander-Arnold is out due to a virus, and Joel Matip is also left in Liverpool due to a knee injury. And in Chelsea team news, Ross Barkley, N'Golo Conte, Antonio Rudiger and Andreas Christensen have all been ruled out of their game at Ajax tomorrow night. England Rugby Union head coach Eddie Jones says someone was filming their training session ahead of Saturday's World Cup semi-final. They take on defending champions New Zealand in Yokohama, and Jones believes whoever was watching their preparations probably wasn't an opposition spy, as it's easy to research teams and training online now. We'll be talking a little bit more about that one later in the show. Just quickly, in your weather, tonight looking at a largely dry one with clear periods and a bit of patchy mist and fog around in England and Wales. A little bit cloudier with some rain in northern Scotland and Northern Ireland. And tomorrow we're looking at outbreaks of rain pushing across Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy at times. Southeast England will see some showers as well. Elsewhere, largely dry with some sunny spells. Highs here in the UK of around 15 degrees. That's the latest here on Love Sport Drive.
Thanks, Guy. And we are talking the 100. It's unprecedented in British sport. We have had teams for a competition decided by a draft. How very American. Perhaps we'll start fining people for having their knees out next. Looking at some of these Americanised team names, there are some amazing squads in there. Trent Rockets, Southern Brave, Northern Superchargers, Welsh Fire. Southern Brave, of course, are being tipped as one of the very, very strongest teams in the mix. They've got Jofra Archer in there, Russell, Warner, Dawson, and of course, a certain Mr. Tamal Mills, who joins us on the line now, England and Sussex bowler. Evening, Tamal. Thanks for your time. How excited are you to be involved with the 100?
Yeah, good evening, guys. Nice to hear from you. Yeah, I can't wait. It's obviously a little while away, plenty plenty of time to wait until then, unfortunately. But yeah, I know all the players are really excited. Obviously, after the draft the other night, it was really good to see, good to watch. And yeah, no, personally, I'm looking forward to joining up with the team and seeing how we can go.
And you've been drafted by Southern Brave. I've been reading a bit of analysis about that draft system in the last day or two. And a lot of people saying you've got the strongest outfit. How are you feeling about your chances? Outfit in terms of team, not kit, by the way, which are all fairly bizarre.
Well, I'm a big fan of Pom Bears, so I'm happy with that. But yeah, look, I think first of all the teams look really strong. It's going to be a brilliant tournament. Every team's got superstars in there. But yeah, I think Mihaela and the guys on the night picked a really strong side. I think they obviously looked to try and get as many Sussex and Hampshire players as possible, just to keep a little bit of identity and some local players. And yeah, I think they've done really well throughout the draft. We kind of look to have got all bases covered. It is only paper, isn't it? We've got to go out there and do the business on the field.
How did you feel it worked as a spectacle, the draft, and how did you follow it? Were you glued to the screens, sort of praying your name was going to come up, or did you take the approach of, I'll sort of take myself away, occupy my mind with something else, and find out afterwards?
Yeah, no, I watched it on TV. Like, I'm a big American sports fan, so I'm always watching the NFL and the NBA drafts when they're on, so I'm familiar with that, and also I've been in plenty of cricket drafts before all around the world. It's pretty regular now. It's obviously the first time it happened in England, but wasn't anything new for myself. But yeah, I just stayed at home and watched it with my missus at home. She was relieved when I got picked when my face popped up on the screen. But yeah, I thought it was really good. You know, for a first go, I think they did a good job at presenting it. I'm sure there'll be things that they'll want to improve on in the future, but it's a time-consuming event, as I said, from drafts for the last few years. It is a long event, but yeah, I thought they did really well, and yeah, I thought it was good to watch.
Of course, it is a slightly different format as well, with those 5-ball overs in the mix. How do you feel your style of play is going to suit things?
Yeah, it's not that much different to T20, if we're being really honest. I don't think things will change that much. The batsmen will have to be a little bit more aggressive earlier, obviously with the 20 less balls. But aside from that, I think just looking at myself and how I'm going to go about it, I don't think I'm going to have to change too much, if I'm being completely honest, from how you go about a normal T20.
And just lastly, Tamal, looking at your squad in particular, who do you think is going to be the key player, if you had to say, from your experience playing T20 all over the world, I'm sure, with a lot of these guys already? Who are you really excited about lining up alongside? I know you're Jofra's PR man, sort of 90% of the time. You are allowed to say him, but is there anyone else that jumps out that you think could be maybe a bit more of a secret weapon come the 100 next year?
Oh, well, he's definitely not a secret, but Andre Russell's, you know, he's as X factor as it comes. He whacks it out of the ground and he bowls 90 miles an hour. So you look at that, and then maybe for a more kind of lesser known name, we've got guys like Ross Whiteley from Worcestershire. He's a middle order batter who really gives it a whack. So I think he was a really good pickup. And then down the bottom, kind of at the end of the draft, managed to pick up Ollie Pope and Al Davies, who are two really good wicket-keeper batsmen. So yeah, I think we've got a lot of big names, as you say. There'll be a lot of attention on Jofra, David Warner, Andre Russell, but you know, I think we've got a few good sneaky picks in there as well who could really do the business for us.
Tamal, great to speak to you. Good luck for the 100 as well. Tamal Mills, their England and Sussex bowler, who has, of course, been drafted for Southern Brave in that new tournament. I love this idea of someone who gives it a whack. A technical cricketing term. I would love to be described as a cricketer who gives it a whack.
Have you never been described like that?
No, because I've never made direct contact with a cricket ball.
Neither have I. It must feel great, though.
It must do.
And seriously, looking at these squads, and I've been a sceptic at the 100, and I remain one to a degree, but you cannot, you know, being a cricket fan, you cannot look at these 8 squads of players and deny that it is an exciting prospect to see any combination of 11 of these players. I think their squads of 15 at the moment with one wild card to be added as well. You can't pretend that it's not going to be a quality, a cricketing tournament of the highest quality. As Tamal was just listing there, some of the players playing his franchise alone, Jofra Archer, Andre Russell, David Warner, Liam Dawson and James Vince, both England cricketers, of course, Shadab Khan, the Pakistani spinner, Chris Jordan, Jamal Mills, Ross Whiteley, Delroy Rawlins, Ollie Pope. If he was being picked up right at the end, by the way, Ollie Pope's a player I watch a lot of at Surrey, and of course he is going to be on the England tours going to New Zealand as well. He's going to play a lot for England in the future. Just 21 years old, a brilliant player in all formats, and if he was going right at the end in one of the last rounds, that tells you how high the standard's going to be. There are going to be some issues with scheduling clashes and diminishing the quality of some of the other competitions, marginalising the county game even further. Serious concerns that you can't ignore. But I don't think you can deny that having groups of players like that on, remember, terrestrial TV, I think, for 10 of the games, prime time on probably Thursday, Friday, maybe Saturday evenings and afternoons, that is going to make a massive difference to cricket's profile. And let's make no mistake, the ECB lucked out massively with the cricketing summer we just had, with England winning the World Cup and the way we did that, and with Ben Stokes at Headingley and a brilliant Ashes series overall. But you know what? Sometimes you need a bit of luck in sport and in life, and I'm a massive cricket fan, and if one way or another this makes cricket more popular than it is, then to be honest, I don't think you can complain massively at the means if the ends justify it.
Well, when we're talking about that popularity, there's been a lot of publicity, both positive and negative, about the hundreds attempts to target itself really at younger children, particularly with the KP sponsorship deal, which sees every franchise
sponsored by Kevin Peterson,
where either a brand of peanut or crisp or popcorn across their chest. I'm not interested in the sort of nutritional politics of that, but do you think it's going to work? Do you think we're going to see 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds going, "Oh, good, cricket"?
Johnny, I wish I had a crystal ball, not just for this reason. I'd probably use it for other things as well. I think it will. I really do, because I think as a kid, you are so impressionable. You know, you only need to go. I think of Nick Hornby's book, Fever Pitch, which I'm sure as an Arsenal fan you've read. I'd recommend it to any football fan, anyone at all, really. It's a book about life as much as it is about football. He fell in love with the Arsenal because he was taken on a cold winter's day, a rainy day, to see a low-quality game. I can't remember who they played, but they drew 1-1, I think, with a penalty rebound, is the quote that sticks in my mind. And he was taken to see, I think, Chelsea a couple of weeks later, also by his dad. And they were a much more glamorous team at the time, Osgood and the like. And he didn't want them. He liked Arsenal already because of that penalty rebound that he'd seen. And it's the same with cricket and with anything. If you go and see it and you see a good game, then why wouldn't you think, oh, cricket is good, actually? Yeah, that is good fun. And I like the loud music and the fire. I think T20 has already done that to a degree here and in other parts of the world. Maybe this is going to go one step further. And on the note of the children and the family side of things, you might have seen Chris Gale wasn't picked up, which I think raised a lot of eyebrows. But
because he's 47.
Well, I think that probably played a part. If you've only got 100 balls, I think the fielding's going to be even more important. The bloke can barely move, and he will be genuinely 41 next summer. But also, he had that, do you remember that really, really quite, uncomfortable interview, to put it very mildly, with the Australian reporter a few years ago, where he was extremely inappropriate after
I'd forgotten that.
A Big Bash game. And he's not played in the Big Bash since that year. And he hasn't been picked up in the 100 either. So, yes, there will have been mobility issues, shall we say, age issues potentially as well. I wonder if there were some image issues for the Universe boss too.
Interesting. Universe boss. Interesting as well.
Self-styled.
Yeah, of course. Interesting how those little moments stick with you when you're deciding which team to support, or when you've already decided the one chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter. My specific memory was the first time I went to see Arsenal. I was taken by my dad, and I must have been 6 or 7. And I remember a kind of middle-aged, maybe 35-year-old Arsenal fan giving me his seat on the tube simply because I was wearing an Arsenal scarf, and thinking, this lot are all right, actually. And however many years of kind of fourth-place mediocrity you have to sit through, you don't get to change, do you? It's like the Nick Hornby moment. If you see the 100 this summer and you're a kid and you love it, you will be stuck on, presumably, Southern Brave for life.
And Pom Bears.
And Pom Bears.
Giving your team the coverage they deserve. Love Sport Radio.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. Kenna
Men.
Kid.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
Urine.
Secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
Urine.
10 of men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
There are fewer than 10 days to get ready for Brexit. Find out what you need to do to prepare now at gov.uk/Brexit.
Have you had enough of extortionate energy bills? A spokesman said could help you find the cheapest energy deals on the market. Don't take our word for it. There's hundreds of spokesman said customers who've saved big. Brian from Derbyshire saved £400 on his energy bills, and Tony from Northampton saved a massive £2,800 on his gas and electric. A spokesmansaid.com, the leading price comparison site where you can switch to the cheapest energy tariffs on the market in just minutes.
Thespokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
When your kids are ill, you just want to help them feel better. But you don't always need antibiotics. Get advice from your local pharmacy or search NHS Choices.
Love sport. England have got the challenge of their collective careers coming up on Saturday. There is not one man in that Eddie Jones squad with experience of a World Cup semi-final. That's going to change at around 9 o'clock in the morning when they go out against the All Blacks. And when you're gearing up for the biggest game of your career, you need to be in the zone. You need to be focused. When you're playing a sport like rugby, you're going out to war. You need to be there ready for a scrap with some hard New Zealanders. And everything has to be right to get yourself in the zone for that, doesn't it, Guy?
100%. Yeah, it's got to be everything from the nutrition and the diet to the training and the coaching to, maintaining the right body temperature to staying in the right hotel. And I think from what we've read, they're ticking all those boxes, aren't they, Johnny?
They are. I think particularly the hotel is going to gear them up for a real kind of street fight of a rugby match.
Definitely. Where is it again?
Disneyland.
That's right. Wait, what?
Disneyland.
Disneyland Tokyo.
Yeah.
That's where the England rugby team is staying.
This is a baffling headline, isn't it? The situation is that the semi-finalists they drew lots, and you got to pick first, second, third or fourth. England was second and actively chose to stay in a hotel at Disneyland. Now, we're told they're not staying in kind of Disney-themed rooms, not the proper...
I love how that detail was included because
suites.
It takes me back to, I went to Disneyland Paris when I was about 6-7 years old. I can distinctly remember Mickey and Minnie and Donald Duck and Daffy, I think is one of them.
Daffy Duck is in the mix, mate.
They were all plastered all over the walls. It was great. And I thought, as soon as it was only when they clarified that they weren't staying in those, I thought how brilliant it would have been if they were. As if it would have actually taken away from their preparation if they were. I guess maybe the smartest rooms in the hotel don't have Daffy Duck on the walls. I don't know. But so they're not staying in those rooms, but they're staying in a Disneyland hotel.
They are. And there are Disneyland-themed memorabilia around. They are going to have some things on the wall. And the rather pleasing comparison has been made that this is almost the stuff of fairy tales. We've got to hope that it's Mulan rather than Bambi come Saturday morning. But, there is an element
England's Rugby World Cup campaign as a Disney movie is not a feature I thought I'd be doing.
Get in touch.
Yeah, get in
touch. The Circle
seriously.
of Life, 0208 70 20 558. You know what I mean, though? There is a kind of element about the fantastical. We were expected to have a chance of getting this far, of course, but where you've got lots of youngsters in that squad, some romantic stories, the likes of Rory McConaughey, and equally older guys who thought they might never play in a World Cup, and certainly not for England in the case of Willie Hines. There is a narrative there, isn't there? A kind of Disney-style theme for us to get behind.
I guess there is. And on a more serious sort of level, you're probably sitting at home and you're thinking, why are they staying in the Disney hotel? And the reason that Eddie Jones has gone for it, and I think this is quite interesting, is it's a little bit away. It's a little bit removed from the sort of city, if you like, the city centre. And I think it's an interesting call because he is, I guess, just trying to minimise the scrutiny that his players come under. He's talked a lot about pressure. We can hear from Eddie Jones now on this, talking about the pressure that is on New Zealand ahead of this game. And I think the main thing that he's trying to achieve this week is to give his players a sense of not a free hit. This is a massively important game, but one where the expectations of the wider world are not on them. Let's have a listen.
Put up your hand if you think we can win. There you go. So no one thinks we can win. There's 120 million Japanese people out there whose second team are all the All Blacks. So there's no pressure on us. We're just got to have a great week, enjoy it, relax.
He doesn't give them any time, Guy.
No.
I'm going to try that with my girlfriend. Put your hand up if you want Johnny to do the washing up. Nope, no one. Okay, bye.
Missed your chance. Yeah, I know. That's typical Eddie Jones, isn't it? He's been playful. I think that bit at the end, you're so sure it's not exactly what he's saying to his players that it makes it okay. But when he's like, I'm just telling them to relax and enjoy it, it's like, well, that's kind of, we're past that stage now, really. If this was Japan, for example, that were in a World Cup semi-final, what a great story that would have been. You would say to them it is literally a free hit. But I think the message externally and publicly has to be pressure's off, all the expectation on New Zealand, which I think largely it is. But to his players, I hope he's saying you've got a fantastic opportunity, because I think they do, because New Zealand feel pressure. That's what Eddie Jones has been stressing. They feel pressure like anyone else. He says they miss tackles, they bleed, they drop passes, just like any other humans. And he says no one thinks we can win. New Zealand talk about walking towards pressure. Well, this week the pressure's going to be chasing them down the street. And it's going to be a massive test for them. They're playing for a third consecutive World Cup, and at some point, something's got to give. They're not going to win every single World Cup game forevermore. They're going to lose one at some point, and they're not going to have too many tougher tasks than this England team based on the way we played on Saturday. So, yeah, I like what I'm hearing. The only worry I'd have, Johnny, is would there be a sense of being too closed off from the real world, and then when you suddenly sort of go into the cauldron of the Yokohama Stadium on Saturday night, as it will be Japan time, that you're suddenly a bit like, God blimey, I've been hidden away from all this frenzy, and I'm a bit taken aback by it.
I'd kind of go the other way, because I think, firstly, nothing is going to prepare you for the atmosphere of a World Cup semi-final apart from a World Cup semi-final. It's going to be on another level, regardless of where you've been. You could be training against New Zealand for a month. You still wouldn't get close to replicating that kind of pressure. And I think, actually, even if it does feel like a different world, like a world removed from Disneyland, as I suspect it will, that could be to England's advantage. I want them to walk into a stadium of an atmosphere like nothing they have ever seen or heard and go, wow, game on. This is a different kettle of fish. I am in a different place. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, okay. I kind of like that, to be fair. Let's hear from Warren Gatland too, of course, the Wales coach. He's got a game against South Africa on Sunday. Not Wales' first semi-final, not even Wales' first semi-final under Warren Gatland at a World Cup. He'll be hoping for a different result from that one in 2011 when they lost to France, of course. Let's hear what he had to say.
You get these opportunities once in a lifetime, potentially, so and you've got to grab them with both hands and make the most of it. And so I think it's important that we prepare well this week and let the occasion take care of itself.
25 miles away from the stadium, though, this Disney hotel. 25
you think what
miles.
I'm thinking?
Well, there's a shade of a possibility of a Manchester United, isn't there?
Yeah, well, Man United used to be regularly late for games at Old Trafford under Jose Mourinho. It so happened when they were staying literally a mile away. We're 25 miles away, and from what I hear, traffic in Tokyo makes it look pretty free-flowing here in London, and that's saying something. So, yeah, I would be slightly worried that we're either going to have to leave so long before that the players are going to be kind of cramping up from sitting on a coach for too long. These are big boys, remember, or we're going to be late. Neither of which is ideal. I'm sure it won't happen. And by the way, just stay with us, because after 6, we're going to be speaking to Bryce McMurray, who's a top fitness and performance coach. And he has spoken in the past to the likes of Dave Allred, who was part of the 2003 World Cup winning setup, all about exactly how the preparations will be being done in the lead up to these big knockout games. I suspect there's less intensity to them in a way than we probably imagine, that it's more of a walkthrough. That's how I remember Steve Thompson talking about it when he was in here a couple of weeks ago, saying it's a lot less intense than it is at the start, because you kind of know what it is you're meant to be doing. You're trying to keep yourselves in tip-top condition. But we're interesting to hear a little bit more about that. We're going to talk a bit more about Andy Murray as well, Johnny. I don't know if you saw this today, but I thought it was great. Classic Andy Murray, talking about how much of a pain and a pest he is to work with. And we've all seen him, haven't we, out on court in the middle of matches, losing big points. He'll be shouting up at his box, and you think, mate, what on earth are they supposed to be doing? You're the tennis player. They've been practicing with you, getting you fit and getting you in this good condition. It's not their fault if you miss a forehand, but at least he's got the self-awareness to talk about how much of a nightmare he is coming back, of course, from that hip surgery. I think his coaching staff do deserve an incredible amount of credit.
Do you reckon there is an elite sportsman on this earth who isn't a nightmare to work with? I feel like something about, I'm not saying that as, an insult, but something about that extreme level of competitiveness. You know, living with Cristiano Ronaldo, I imagine, is a nightmare. I'm
Yeah.
sure he's lovely, but if he's doing press-ups at 3 a.m, that's not going to be relaxing, is it?
Yeah, isn't it Ronaldo who sleeps like an hour at a time and gets up and goes to the gym or something every hour? Something a bit ridiculous. It's a fair point. But I wonder if tennis players are maybe a more extreme version of that. Potentially, you know, we see so many of them with anger issues on court, lose their temper. You know, Kyrgios is extreme, but many of them do it. It's that gladiatorial environment, and there is so much pressure on it, and you sort of feel every bit of it yourself. And I think that tennis more so than in other sports, in team sports certainly, although I think you probably make a fair point. I'm sure a lot of these people that we see smiling, grinning, holding trophies afterwards, there's probably a lot more unfriendly chat that goes on between them and their coaches than when they're congratulating them and thanking their backroom staff for their role in getting them there.
Yeah, quite possibly. You think it's probably what they deserve, though, isn't it? If you have to sit there being shouted at by Andy, I think a sushi dinner is the least you can ask for. We've got lots more to come right here on Posh Boys on Drive, so don't go anywhere.
This is Love Sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
It's cancer, they said. My first thought, let's just say it wasn't money, but time off work for treatment and trips to the hospital, paying the mortgage, and the cost of living doesn't go away just because you're living with cancer, and Macmillan can help with that too. My advice? Take their advice, soon as I did.
Macmillan, right there with you. Call now or search Macmillan Money Worries.
Hi, my name's Kurt Edwards. I work in advertising and live in Surrey. Last year, the family contents insurance was £745. A friend of mine had recommended a spokesmansaid.com. When it came for this year's renewal, I managed to get it for £403. So for those 10 minutes on that website, I saved over £340. Told my family, my friends, you'd be absolutely mad not to give it a go.
Spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're driving on a motorway and you see a red X sign overhead, you need to change lanes safely. Driving in a red X lane is an offence. Red X's are there for a reason, to protect you and others from danger. The lane may be blocked by a broken down vehicle or road workers, or the lane may be needed for the emergency services. So if you see a red X, change lanes safely. Highways England, connecting the country.
We got a top-class hour coming for you here on Posh Boys on Drive. We're going to be talking to a top fitness and performance expert, finding out just what it has taken to get Andy Murray back to his best and how frustrating it can be to work with some of these elite athletes. And we are, of course, talking Arsenal, continuing our inquest into last night's defeat. We're going to be joined by Arsenal blogger Le Grove. Not, shall we say, a staunch supporter of Unai Emery. It'll be interesting to hear his thoughts on that performance. We'll have Champions League team news for you for all of tonight's games. And of course, we'll be finding out exactly what Love Sport Radio have got coming up for you after 7 on those fan shows. But first of all, it's time for all your latest news.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 6, some MPs think Boris Johnson's bluffing after threatening to scrap his Brexit deal if he doesn't get his way on a crucial vote. Tonight, the Commons will decide whether to support a controversial 3-day timetable for the legislation to get approved. The Prime Minister says if that schedule's rejected, he'll demand a general election, although it's something Parliament has to agree to. The SNP's Westminster leader, Ian Blackford, is furious.
It is simply an insult to democracy that the government are trying to push this bill through on limited time. And I urge members, I urge even those on the government benches to ask themselves, is this really how they want things to be done?
The Shadow Foreign Secretary says she smelt a rat over the way an investigation into the death of Harry Dunn was initially handled. The main suspect in the fatal crash fled to the US claiming diplomatic immunity. Anne Sakoulas has since asked to be interviewed by British police officers. Emily Thornberry, who's spoken to the Dunn family, wants action.
I think there are times when you have to say, these brave people need somebody on their side, and I am the Foreign Secretary, or I am the Prime Minister, and I'm standing up for them, and not just getting the jitters. Oh my goodness, it's the Americans involved. We have to be careful about this. No, this is a dead boy.
A public inquiry is to be held into the deaths of 22 people in the Manchester Arena terror attack. Meanwhile, the brother of the bomber has appeared in court and pleaded not guilty to murder. A self-styled pickup artist from Glasgow has been jailed for 2 years over threatening behaviour towards young women. Adnan Ahmed, who called himself Addy A Game, secretly filmed videos and posted them online. The court heard there was a significant sexual aspect to the offences. Manchester United have given an indefinite ban to someone who allegedly racially abused Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold. It happened during Sunday's 1-1 Premier League draw. And Kim Kardashian West has revealed her husband Kanye gave $1 million to charity for her birthday. The reality TV star turned 39 yesterday. That's the latest. I'm Will Rowe.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker.
This is the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive.
Good evening. You're listening to the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. Your top stories this evening. Arsenal captain Granit Xhaka has lashed out at Patrice Evra. That's after the Frenchman's suggestion that Arsenal are mentally weak. He's right, isn't he? You lost 1-0 away to Sheffield United for no apparent reason. What other excuse could there be? Mauricio Pochettino, talking of excuses, has admitted that his team are under pressure ahead of their Champions League game against Red Star Belgrade tonight, while Eddie Jones is insisting that all of the pressure is on New Zealand ahead of England's Rugby World Cup semi-final on Saturday. We're going to be speaking to Arsenal blogger Le Grove in just a moment, but before we hear his thoughts, let's hear what Simon Rose from the Gooner had to say about Unai Emery when he joined Richard Lee and Patrick Christys on Love Sport Breakfast this morning.
Our whole play just is not good enough. There's, when you see patterns of Arsenal being so awful away from home, particularly was the second half of the season, we're not even in the second half yet, you have to look at the manager and say, what is he doing to change the nature of how we're playing? How is he setting the team up? How is he impacting the team when it's not going well? And he isn't impacting this team. Now, to my mind, I always backed Wenger in the sense that I liked him and we had been successful with him, and I never thought Arsenal were going to sack him. So if he kept getting new contracts, he was going to be there till the contracts ended. But once you end that cycle and you have a different guy in charge, then you reset that clock. And I don't see really why you would give a manager in an inordinate new amount of time in which to just keep failing if you're just consistently failing. Yeah. Someone at the club has to look at what we're doing in terms of Emery and decide, is this enough?
Simon Rose speaking on Love Sport Breakfast this morning. Remember, you can catch Richard Lee and Patrick Christys from 6:30 tomorrow morning when they'll have all the reaction to tonight's Champions League games. We'll have team news for you from them very shortly. For now, we're joined by Arsenal blogger Le Grove to talk more about Arsenal in light of last night's defeat at Bramall Lane. Good evening. What did you make of what Simon had to say?
I agree that somebody needs to be paying attention to what's going on at Arsenal at the moment. I don't think Emery is the real deal. I think even a basic bit of due diligence at the beginning of his tenure would have told you, what we were going to get. And we haven't hired a manager that can look after a defence. We haven't hired a manager that does well with big egos in the team. And 18 months into this project, he still doesn't know his best starting 11, still doesn't know his best formation. And the output is a mess. And I don't think it's going to improve. And I think the big challenge that the Arsenal board have got at the moment is, do you let this go on until January and then have an even steeper climb to top four? Or do you make a decision earlier and give a new person the chance to push the club forward.
The thing about that is who the new person would be. Now, if Arsenal sacked Unai Emery tomorrow, who could they get? Because if they're just sacking him to bring Mikel Arteta in, is there any point?
I don't think the next hire can be inexperienced. I think we blew that opportunity when we didn't sign Arteta after Arsene Wenger. I think it's going to be an experienced head, and I think that the two most experienced names that are available at the moment is Jose Mourinho, which I know is a toxic suggestion, but
would you have him?
I don't think that would be a great decision, but if you are putting on your pragmatic hat, is he capable of taking Arsenal into the top four? Absolutely. Is it urgent that we make the top four this season? Absolutely. So I don't think it would be the wildest choice, but I certainly wouldn't be giving him a 4-year deal. And then there's Allegri, who has won a lot of titles at Juventus, has taken them to the last four in the Champions League a couple of times with a Juventus that didn't have the same financial firepower as some of the big clubs in Europe. So I know that he's been learning English as well and would relish the challenge to come to the best league in the world. So there are those two options. There's also Freddie Ljungberg, which I think it would be too early, and I think it would be unfair to put him in that situation. But he's got a fantastic relationship with the young players of the club. Everybody loves him. He's got exceptional communication skills, and like Frank Lampard has the backing of Chelsea fans. I think that he would, that there would be a lot of love for him in the Arsenal stands. Something that Emery certainly didn't have.
When you say it's crucial that Arsenal get top four this season, how likely is it that you do that?
Well, if things continue the way they have, I think it's going to be difficult. It looks like the strategy at the moment is hope that Spurs and Manchester United continue to have massive problems, but both clubs have good players. I think Spurs have a very good manager, and I think that he'll probably fix his issues at some point. But everywhere you look at Arsenal at the moment, we're in regression. The manager's added £200 million worth of talent. We're leaking goals. We're not creating any chances. We've got a manager who's kind of a pragmatist, but all you get is the negative football. You don't get the rock solid defence. Nobody's dying for him on the pitch. Our pressing numbers are down. So I think it's looking shaky at the moment. And the most worrying thing is the players don't seem to understand his communications. So and even if they did understand his communications, it's unclear whether he's going to unlock anything magic in this squad. So I think we should rip the plaster and try and make amends before it's too late, because I fear once we get into the tough games in December, we could have a real problem on our hands.
Well, one man who's been communicating rather too well for my liking is Granit Xhaka. He's hit back at Patrice Evra, saying Arsenal are babies and that they lack mental strength. He's saying Evra talks too much, that he's talking rubbish. Is he right? Do you like your captain sounding off in the media in that way?
I don't like our captain. I think that one of the worst decisions that Emery's made, and a decision that completely summed up Unai Emery, is that Granit Xhaka has never been a good Arsenal player. He's error prone. He's not physically capable in the Premier League, and he doesn't lead by example. He doesn't have any of the core things that you need from a captain on or off the pitch. So when Emery let the decision run into September and then held a democratic vote on Xhaka becoming the captain, it just said all you need to know about Unai Emery. Granit Xhaka trapping off to Patrice Evra. I mean, that's the most fight we've seen from him this season. So I'm glad that he's got it in him, but ideally he'd keep his mouth shut, because everything that we're seeing on the pitch, Arsenal do have a soft underbelly. We're going to Sheffield United, and after the game, I'm feeling pretty good about the performance, because we strung a few passes together. We played a little bit through the middle. Like Unai Emery and Granit Xhaka are lowering the standards of Arsenal fans, and the fact that he has that Emery has the temerity to give that guy the captain's armband is a bigger problem than what Xhaka's saying in the press.
One man who Emery certainly won't be backing publicly or privately in the near future is Mesut Ozil. We've had the stat today. He's missed 101 games since joining the club 6 years ago, with only one serious injury in that spell. Why does he miss so many, and is he done now?
I think that there are two sides to this story. Like, firstly, Mesut Ozil did not have an offer from anywhere in Europe for £350,000 a week. Ivan Gazidis giving him that deal is, hands down one of the worst pieces of business in Europe over the last 10 years. Mesut Ozil is a difficult player to manage. He has an ego. He's sensitive. He needs an arm around the shoulder. Emery knew that Mesut Ozil was his most expensive talent in the squad. And Emery knew that Mesut wasn't going to defend. He hasn't built a system around him. He's decided that he's persona non grata in the side. Great. He didn't get rid of him in the summer. Emery brought him back into pre-season. We thought that the olive branch had been handed out, and then Emery gave Mesut the captain's armband, and now he's dropped him. And when a manager makes a big decision like dropping the most expensive player in the side, there has to be some light at the end of the tunnel. We've dropped Mesut Ozil. He is still one of the most creative players in the world, and Arsenal aren't creating chances. So I think that there's a PR battle going on between Ozil and Emery, and I think that Ozil is winning the battle at the moment, because what we're seeing on the pitch is drab. Joe Willock against Sheffield United didn't create a single chance yesterday. I mean, like, if there's ever a need to bring Mesut Ozil or to build some sort of system that releases his talents and at least gets the team ticking, like, this is the moment. And after giving him one of the 5 captains armband, you would think that he'd be able to do that, but he hasn't. He's just continued to drop him. So Mesut Ozil hasn't played a lot of games. I think part of it is his fault, but I also think that as a manager of a top club, you've got to work out a way of getting the most out of your best players. And Mesut Ozil still is one of our best players.
Le Grove, great to speak to you. Thank you for your time. Le Grove, their Arsenal blogger, giving his take on the state of play at the club. Some Arsenal fans really not happy with Unai Emery, but the question remains, if you get rid of him, who comes in? Jose Mourinho was a name that was suggested. Yes, he's brilliant. Yes, he's a winner. He is also a nightmare. He is also a nightmare with a sell-by date of about 2 years at any given club.
Oh, so suddenly you don't want short-termism, says the man who sat opposite me for the last 3 hours and said how much he's annoyed by Unai Emery.
I'm not saying...
And you want to get rid of a man who's been there 15 months?
I have never advocated...
So what's wrong with 2 years? 2 years would be a good stint. If that's what Jose Mourinho can give you, he normally gives you 3, remember?
You want to make a managerial signing...
He's brilliant, he's a winner. That's what you start off by saying.
Yeah, for 2-3 years. You want to make a managerial signing in an ideal world who can be around for 10 years. You want to be able to go full ridiculous Pardew contract at Newcastle. You want to have that much faith. I'm not saying sack Unai Emery for the sake of it. Well, quite. I'm saying if there is a better option available, bring him in. I don't think
Jose Mourinho is out of work. Massimiliano Allegri is out of work. There are not good managers, top managers around. The people that have been winning some of the biggest European leagues, not to mention some of the other domestic trophies, and even competing for the Champions League, in Jose's case, winning them in the not that distant past. And you and someone like Le Grove, whose views I really respect because you talk real sense about not just Arsenal but other things as well, you're saying, well, Emery was never the right appointment. The ship has sailed, if you like, for Mikel Arteta to take over at Arsenal as his first managerial job. So if you don't want someone who's come with, if you like, half-decent pedigree from Europe, if you don't want to give it to someone inexperienced a la Mikel Arteta or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, then what else is your other option? To me, the glaring open bracket is the established top-level big-name manager. Okay, it might not go brilliantly, but Arsenal fans that I'm hearing and listening to, and there's been a few of them today, are saying that they don't like Emery. So where next?
Well, I think exclusively targeting managers who are out of work whilst that sounds like what you should be doing, in practice, in the world of the dark arts, is stupid. I think it's a small club mentality going, oh, well, there's Jose or there's Allegri. Which of those two do you want? It shouldn't be a question of that for a club like Arsenal. They should be looking at world football. They should be looking at the very impressive young Ajax manager. They should be looking at Simeone at Atletico Madrid and thinking, A, can we tempt these people to come to us? Because it's a big if. But thinking about who, money no object, employment no object, their perfect appointment would be. Unai Emery is not destroying Arsenal Football Club. He is not taking a torch to the Emirates. He's not selling the key men. He's harmless.
You might have thought he was, by the way, listening to some of the stuff we've had on today.
It's true. He is not a terrible football manager. He's just a manager who hasn't decided what his vision is. With that in mind, I'm convinced he's not the right man, but I'm also convinced that giving him to the end of the season will not destroy Arsenal. So with that in mind, the next guy doesn't have to be unemployed right now. He could have a job and we could just have a little word. Let's have a couple of clever points, couple of articles in the press, start sniffing around. We're going to have Champions League team news for you very, very shortly.
This is Love Sport.
Join me, Ewan Thomas and the Posh Boys here on Love Sport Drive this Friday as we count down to the Rugby World Cup semi-finals. All the build-up to England versus New Zealand and a massive weekend of football, all on Love Sport.
Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it,
sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
It's cancer, they said. My first thought, let's just say it wasn't money, but time off work for treatment and trips to the hospital, paying the rent, and. The cost of living doesn't go away just because you're living with cancer, and Macmillan can help with that too. My advice? Take their advice. Soon as. I did.
Macmillan, right there with you. Call now or search Macmillan Money Worries.
Can you save money on your energy bills? Tony did, with help from a spokesmansaid.com. Getting people real savings.
I'm Tony from Northampton. My bills for gas and electricity had gone straight through the roof. I chose a Spokesman Said, and they saved me £2,800. It was so easy, I use them for my house and contents insurance too.
For help saving money on your energy bills, go to a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
My mum and dad say that I don't need lots of sugar. I'm sweet enough already. So we used the Change for Life food scanner app to find out how much sugar is in our food and drink. It's surprising how much we found. So I put my detective hat on to find the healthier choices. Woohoo! Found one, Mum! You can be food smart too. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app today.
I gave Kim Jong-un the upper hand, but only a tiny...
Love Sport.
We are underway in your early kickoffs in tonight's Champions League action. Shakhtar racing into an early lead against Dinamo Zagreb, 1-0 in Ukraine, and Atletico Madrid 0, Bayer Leverkusen 0. We're going to have team news for you from Manchester City versus Atalanta and Tottenham versus Red Star Belgrade very, very shortly. First of all, I want to talk Andy Murray. He's in the Davis Cup squad for the first time since 2016. He's won a first ATP title since his return from injury. And it's not just the one injury, let's be honest. Andy has had it very, very tough from start to finish. We are joined on the line by Love Sport's favourite, I have to say, fitness and performance coach, Bryce McMurray. Good evening, Bryce. Thanks for joining us. Just talk us through Andy Murray's injury record, because he's had it tough.
He has had it tough, and I think, to do a bit of the background here, the icing on the cake really was back last December because, tennis aside, the pain was so bad that it was affecting everyday life, and I think that was the wake-up call for him when he's preparing for Melbourne. You know, he knew that potentially this was a career-threatening injury. He may have to give up the sport if he didn't seek to go ahead with hip resurfacing. And so from his point of view, when you fast forward to now, and when he's quoted as saying, you know, he wakes up in the morning without pain and he's already feeling much better mentally, and I think that's a huge component here. I think that's a fantastic story with regard to how, with hard work, graft, and determination, you can really come through any injury and overcome adversity.
Well, let's talk about this last operation itself, hip resurfacing. I've broken a hip, which I appreciate is different, but it's really, really painful. What does this kind of operation entail?
So this is more of a modern style of surgery. You know, it kind of wasn't around 10 years ago. It's more of a conservative kind of artificial joint replacement. So the hip joint is realigned per se, but they don't take the head off the femur, which is the long bone of the thigh. It's better suited to our younger patients, typically with a sporting background. And it's more suited to athletes because it gives improved quality of life afterwards. And the key thing here is obviously restoring functionality in the hip. So they kind of replace the damaged bone in the joint, but preserve as much of that natural tissue as possible. And so as it's worked out, you know, this has been fantastic for Andy, because to come back in really such a short space of time is testament to how far medicine has moved.
And the rehabilitation from that kind of surgery, whilst you say it's perhaps more surface level, it's still invasive. How tough is it to get back to your very best?
I think the big thing here is going to be the mental side of things, because he has been through multiple injuries before, and it's a long rehab process. So you have a lot of days where it's a similar routine. You have to go in, you have to graft, you have to work hard in the gym, and it may seem like there's very little progress day on day. You know, with rehab, there'll always be distinct phases. And the kind of primary concern immediately following surgery is protection of that compromised tissue. So it's restoring movement around that hip joint especially, but also protecting his gait. So when we talk about the gait, that's the way an athlete walks. So sometimes you can develop gait abnormalities following surgery, and this is where it's crucial, where physical therapy can play a role. And so we move into phase 2, we have the strength and conditioning side, and then move into strength 3. It's more of a balanced, more sports-specific movements that are used in tennis. But I think it's important to kind of recognize one of the key components here that's really played a pivotal role in his rehab, and that's been the Alter G treadmill. Now, this treadmill typically costs around £36,000. I mean, most professional clubs, football clubs especially in the UK, have all got one in the rehab department. And it basically allows an athlete to train with reduced body weight, because they're in a sealed treadmill per se, and with the air being pumped in, it takes the pressure off their legs so that they can gradually increase the percentage of body weight that's going through the joints. So one of the key aims post-surgery is obviously we want to get the patients moving as quickly as possible, but obviously many people are in too much pain, especially when it comes to weight bearing. So with this treadmill that he said he's been used extensively at home, you can get the athletes moving very quickly without aggravating the joints and obviously worsening the condition further.
I'd hope it would turn you into Eliud Kipchoge for that money, to be honest, Bryce. But I'll take that as a close second. And in terms of this specific injury, if you like, not only had it not been done by many players in tennis to come back from it, Bob Bryan, of course, the doubles player, had done it successfully, but no singles player. There's Ed Jovanovski, I have to say, an ice hockey player I hadn't heard of, but who Murray says he spoke to a lot during his rehab. But how much more impressive does it make it, given the lack of role models, if you like? I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean, examples, previous examples who he could follow to get back, when it must have been really tough at some points in that rehab when he was doing a yet another endless day of hip exercises or whatever. It must have taken a lot of mental strength.
Of course, I guess you kind of talk about going to those dark times in rehab where it's very repetitive in nature, and he doesn't comparable athletes within tennis. I mean, that it has happened to numerous athletes. I think it's very popular in America, especially. So a lot of baseballers have gone through this. But when he consulted with the surgeons before he went through with the process, one of the reasons he went with Sarah Muirhead Alwood was because of her brutal honesty. And she told him directly, she said, I cannot guarantee that this is going to work for you to get back to performing high-level tennis. But the one thing I will guarantee is that the pain will subside. And so from Andy's point of view, he's kind of looking at it thinking, obviously I want quality of life because he has kids and he wants to be able to get up every day and move pain-free, which is a huge factor for anybody nowadays. So I think that's a huge component there when he was going through the surgeons and he was just hit with brutal honesty in terms of, I want to reduce the pain. And let's think how far he's come. You know, he literally, from the very beginning, was struggling to put his shoes and socks on and sitting in the chair and trying to touch the ground. But, you know, every single day, there's a real story of grit and determination and his winning mindset that he kept chipping away. And whether it was a millimeter or a centimeter at a time, he was prepared to put the hard yards in and graft to get him back in top shape.
I feel like Andy Murray's whole career really has been a story of grit and determination, hasn't it? But this, I guess, episode more than any other. And as a coach yourself, Bryce, as someone who's worked with people probably rehabbing from horrible injuries, and Murray's talked about how much of a pain and a pest he was for his team, is that something you could relate to, reading those comments, thinking, yeah, some of these people, you don't have to name names, but can be a real nightmare when it comes to actually getting them to do all their rehab and go through what it takes to get back to their best?
Absolutely, and I think a lot of it boils down to their passion because they want to do well, and he probably questions everything. So I think what we can take away from this is his absolute love for tennis and his competitive nature within. He's stuck with his physio, Mark Bender, and his S&C coach, Matt Little. I remember seeing them training back in Loughborough. They've been with him for many years, so they will be well aware of Andy's personality. There's no denying his work rate and attitude, and that's what makes him a top professional. Because if you think about it, it takes someone really special to go from being written off completely, barely able to walk, to winning a singles title again within 6 months. I think it's a fantastic story.
It really is. And another fantastic story would be an England Rugby World Cup win. We've all got our fingers crossed for it here at Love Sport Radio. Eddie Jones's men will, of course, be preparing for Saturday's fixture as we speak. How will elite athletes of that kind be going about getting ready for it?
So I think the key word here at this stage of the tournament is going to be tapering, where, believe it or not, we actually taper down with regard to workload and intensity, because we're not going to lose fitness in 6 days, but you can certainly push yourself beyond breaking point. So when we talk about periodization, which is kind of looking at the calendar year in terms of how we schedule our training sessions, tapering is a key component. We're going to reduce the training and practice volume approaching this key match, which is obviously the semi-final, and make sure that training is geared towards more tactical strategy because the fitness is in the bank. And I think if we look back to, the lessons from winning World Cups in the past, 2003, of course, England were a bit overcooked heading into the quarterfinals, and they openly admitted that afterwards. And one of the key things that came to mind was they had a player honesty session afterwards where all the players came together to talk about what was working well and what wasn't. And one of the key things they took back to Sir Clive was that they were training too hard and they were absolutely knackered. So the really emphasis moving forward was this tapering going into the session. And I know you guys have mentioned this earlier, but the nutrition and the loading is crucial over the course of this next week to kind of give you an idea of the sessions they'll be going through. A lot of emphasis now will be on kind of rehab and recovery after the quarterfinal, building into the semi. And where in the past, in the World Cup, they would have been doing, say, 2 or 3 strength sessions, 2 or 3 anaerobic running sessions on the field, and their squad sessions as well. They now go into a full taper where they'll probably do 1 gym session this week. They'll probably do 1 specific speed session for individuals. And then they'll have 2 rugby sessions on the field where the intensity is dropped. In some cases, they'll walk through. And they'll be on and off the field for a maximum 45 to 60 minutes. So that's kind of where we are heading into next weekend.
Bryce, great to talk to you. Thank you for your time. Bryce McMurray there, who is a top fitness and performance coach. It is extraordinary that these people come back from injuries of that kind, not just to be able to walk again or jog again or put socks on again or whatever it may be, but to go and beat other elite athletes again. It's staggering.
It is remarkable, and just hearing a bit more detail, I hope everyone kind of listening at home, wherever you are, found that as interesting as I did, to hear about that detail of what you have to go through in that rehab process, physically talking about improving by as little as millimetres at a time, how maddening that must be for someone like Andy Murray, who was an absolute peak athlete, literally a sort of year and a half before, and suddenly there he was struggling to put on shoes and socks. You had him, being forced to overcome that mental barrier as well of how far do I want to push myself? Am I willing to go to get back to playing tennis? No guarantee, of course, that he would have been able to reach those same levels. He hasn't yet, but to have done what he's done just 9 months after undergoing the surgery that he did is, I think, nothing short of remarkable. He could retire tomorrow, and the comeback itself as it is would have been great. And also, listening to how that World Cup team would be preparing, it's not going to be blood and thunder in the training sessions. It's going to be walkthroughs. I could do that.
Pina coladas and massages.
Well,
sign me up.
Yeah, I think there'll probably be more massages than pina coladas. But
alcohol-free.
Oh, okay.
Actually, probably the coconut milk's a problem, isn't it?
Coconut milk.
Too fatty.
Could be a problem. I think it speeds up the digestive system as well,
How
shall we say.
How do you know that?
Because I've had coconut milk.
Oh, I see. I see the comment that was being made.
I wouldn't want to recommend too much coconut milk before a big sporting game or anything that might induce nerves, actually.
You could put the Kiwis off, couldn't you? That'd be one way of doing it.
Don't have Kiwis either. They could have the same effect.
Serious point there. One thing Bryce repeatedly came back to with Andy Murray was the psychological aspect. And your phrase of being an elite athlete just 18 months before is the really striking one, where not even in terms of being a competitor, but just being a happy, functioning human, going from being a kind of freak of athletic brilliance to unable to move must be so hard to reconcile.
And the difference, Johnny, between what Andy Murray went through and what a lot of sports people who have injuries have gone through is, and he wasn't unique in this, but he was unusual in that there wasn't one moment, there wasn't a trauma or an incident. It wasn't like in football, if you are on the receiving end of a terrible tackle, if you do some risky activity and something goes wrong and you get some big impact injury. Do you know what I mean? It was like this gradual wear and tear injury, his hip just getting worse and worse and worse, leaving him at a point where, as we discussed, couldn't do really basic things, couldn't play with his kids. And it kind of makes you think, blimey, like the sacrifice that these people make, Murray just being one of them, is absolutely extraordinary. To then make more sacrifices, if you like, or more effort to get back to that level where, of course, he could risk doing it all over again or doing something similar. It shows what special mentalities these people have. And Andy Murray, he's given us all so much joy, tension, stress as well at times, watching him the last 10, 15 years. But my God, it's when you see, I think, this comeback almost as much as any game of tennis that he's won that shows you just how resilient, how tough a person he is. And yeah, I think there's more to come in the Murray story.
There certainly is. There's been a goal in the Champions League. It is now Shakhtar 1, Dinamo Zagreb 1. Dani Olmo, the highly rated young Spanish winger, with the goal for the Croatian side. He's, of course, a serious Spurs target. We'll be talking about them next. And, of course, team news from Manchester City's game against Atalanta as well. So stay right here.
This is Love Sport.
Think the energy price cap will save you money? Think again. You could be saving a lot more on cheaper energy tariffs. Price comparison site A Spokesman Said will show you just how much money you could be saving against your current tariff. Don't throw away your hard-earned money to the energy companies. Check out aspokesmansaid.com and you could switch to cheaper bills in minutes.
aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Follow @Love Sport Radio on Twitter for all the latest news, views, competitions, and the best bits from your favourite station. Love Sport, the station giving fans a voice.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
It's cancer, they said. My first thought, let's just say it wasn't money, but time off work for treatment and trips to the hospital, paying the mortgage, and the cost of living doesn't go away just because you're living with cancer. And Macmillan can help with that too. My advice? Take their advice. Soon as. I did.
Macmillan, right there with you. Call now or search Macmillan Money Worries.
Driving too close to the car in front gives you less time to react. You may not realise that you're tailgating. Leave a 2-second gap between you and the vehicle in front. When it's wet, leave a 4-second gap. By staying back, you give yourself time to react. Stay safe. Stay back. Highways England, connecting the country.
How are you? How are you really? Modern life can be busy, and sometimes it's easier to look after others before looking after yourself. But there's only one you. And making small changes to your lifestyle now could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. So take the first step to a healthier you with our free How Are You quiz. See how you score and get personalised tips and support. From how to eat a little healthier to turning a 10-minute walk into exercise. Just search 1U.
Love Sport.
It's the Posh Boys on Love Sport Drive. You're with me, Johnny Burrow, and the wonderful Guy Watts, who has all your latest sporting headlines and weather.
You're too kind, Johnny. Manchester United have issued an indefinite ban to a supporter who allegedly racially abused Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold in Sunday's 1-1 Premier League draw. This individual is not welcome at Old Trafford, United said in a statement. The ban, though, is subject to an appeal. Mo Salah is back in the Liverpool squad for tomorrow's Champions League tie with Genk. He missed that 1-1 draw with Man United on Sunday. However, Trent Alexander-Arnold is out due to a virus, and Joel Matip is also left in Liverpool due to a knee injury. In Chelsea team news, Ross Barkley, N'Golo Conte, Antonio Rudiger and Andreas Christensen have all been ruled out of their game at Ajax tomorrow night. And England Rugby Union head coach Eddie Jones says someone was filming their training session ahead of Saturday's World Cup semi-final. They take on defending champions New Zealand in Yokohama. Jones believes whoever was watching their preparations probably wasn't an opposition spy, though, as it is easy to research teams and training online. Weather-wise, we're looking at a largely dry night overnight tonight in England and Wales, a little bit wetter and cloudier in Scotland and Northern Ireland. Tomorrow, a bit more rain in Scotland and Northern Ireland, heavy at times with some showers in southeastern England as well. Elsewhere, though, largely dry with some sunny spells, highs of around about 15 degrees. That's all for now here on Love Sport Drive. Johnny, I believe you have a special guest with you.
It's my favourite part of the show, Guy. Not only am I treated to your delightful company, I get 2 for 1. Charlie Hawkins is in the studio. He's carrying you forward from 7 o'clock for those Love Sport fan shows, kicking us off with the Hammers.
Kicking you off with the Hammers. Can I just say, this is my favourite part of the day as well.
It,
to talk to you two, the Posh Boys. I absolutely love it. I'm desperate to become one of you. I feel we could be a trio. The Three Musketeers of sorts. Up first is the West Ham show. It's not going to be a positive one, is it? Because they tasted defeat just before the international break, losing to Crystal Palace. A bit of a sour taste in their mouth, you know, that to reflect on that result for 10 days. They started the international break. Everton languishing down near the bottom. They lost to Everton.
Let's be honest, did they expect anything else? They always get beaten by Everton. They got smashed by Everton last year.
Pellegrini, unbeaten in 4 against Everton. Yeah.
Really? I swear he was in charge at the London Stadium last year.
Yeah, but at Goodison Park, they're unbeaten in 4. Sorry, that's miscommunication on my part. But they were expecting to win that, because what they want to achieve this year, the run they were going on, bar the last 2 results, they feel that this is the strongest side they've ever put out in the Premier League. The signings they've made, Pellegrini, they really think that all the talk that we're talking now about Leicester slightly different and the Wolves of last year who are breaking into this supposed top 6 now rather than the top 4, they feel like it should be them. But as always, if you want it to be you and you want to emerge from the pack, you need to be winning games like this. No disrespect to Everton, but you need to be not only beating teams like that, but beating them when they are down at the bottom of the table.
You do indeed. But the West Ham guys still confident in Pellegrini, confident in the team more broadly?
Yeah, 100%. They believe that Pellegrini is the right man to take them forward. They think this has been one of the best signings. We talk about all the players they've brought in. It's the manager for them. He really is, they feel, the man to take them to that next level, to join the top tier of that top 4, that top 6, at the top dining table, and he's going to be the one to break them into that.
Talking of signings, there was a lot of excitement about Fornals when he arrived, about £23-24 million. Not done very much, has he?
Not done very much. Started on the weekend in place of Yarmolenko. Yarmolenko's actually been on a good run of form of late. Scored some very crucial goals in games when they've got the 3 points. Didn't start on the weekend. Maybe a change of things in this international break. They've worked on things. Pellegrini said they've mixed up their formations. Wasn't to be. But as always, I don't want to judge too quickly. We'll reserve judgment so far, Johnny, because it is a new league. It's a different physicality, you know, different type of weather. There's still some adapting that he needs to do. Obviously, I've heard you today talking about Nicolas Pepe and how long will he take to adapt and shine for Arsenal. So I think that the same applies with Pablo Fornals.
Well, from 8 o'clock, it's the Crystal Palace fan show. There's no shame in a defeat like that to Man City, is there?
I don't think there is, no, and it's a running theme because they also lost 2-0 on the weekend, losing to City.
Could have been more, by the way.
Could have been more, but City, you know, utterly brilliant on the weekend. I thought absolute, you know, professionalism in the highest order. I thought they were first class, went about their business, and Palace, you know, did have their chances, were in the game in patches, but when you come up against a side like that, and let's not forget, Palace are doing really well. They're still up there. They would have taken it, you know, where they are for the nine games in. They're still up there. They're still not conceding a lot of goals. Benteke, hopefully, can they get him over the line? He nearly scored on the weekend. But it's not all doom and gloom in Palace, and I think this is just one where you go, we came up against better opposition on the day.
And still a really good year for them. They're in the transfer rumour columns today, linked with a £20 million move for Rangers and Colombia striker Alfredo Morelos. We're told they'd have to fight with Aston Villa for his services. What is the feeling there? Because he's a brilliantly talented scorer of goals. He's also completely bonkers.
Never going to happen, John. No chance. They're not going to spend the money. They've got no money. They got the money from Wan-Bissaka, and it was all to balance the books. It feels like, from the word we get on the fan show from the Palace fans, they're not going to spend the money in January. It won't be till the next transfer window. They are also asking the questions, and I've often put this to you, that they're not even sure whether they want Roy to spend that money. Is he the man to spend this money?
Charlie, enlighten me, please. Someone on the phone, 0208 70 20 558. Please explain to me where these Crystal Palace fans get off. Their squad is so average. It is average. You sold your best defender. You have just about kept hold of Wilfried Zaha, who is doing a little bit for you. And you are massively overperforming in the league. If we read down this Premier League table, Crystal Palace are 6th after 9 games. 6th with a bang average squad. If the manager is doing that, how can you want to change? How?
Yeah, it's absolutely nonsense, isn't it? Because where do they want to change? Why do they want to change? And it's the same with every football club. It's the same with every fan. I include myself in that. We're a fickle bunch. Knee-jerk reactions.
#Unite out.
Oh, I don't know about that, John. Very strong, very controversial. But you always believe, as we tend to believe, the grass is greener, isn't it? You know, a new manager can acquire those signings. He's the right man to buy these signings. But look at Everton. Look at Marco Silva. Was he the right man for the job? Did he spend that money well, or are Everton going through this players? You know what you get with Roy, and potentially, if it's possible, and I always say this, Roy is underrated.
He is. He absolutely is. It's so unfair. Well, from 9 o'clock, you've got the fan show. You're going to be looking at the night's Champions League and Championship action. We're going to have team news for you from the Champions League very, very shortly. Then from 10 o'clock, it is the Leicester City fan show. Another win.
Yeah, and I always try to give you a bonus one of the night, one you really want to listen to, tune in. I was speaking to a very excited Lee Chappie earlier and said, what can we expect for the show? And he said, I'll tell you what you can expect. Leicester will 100% get in the top 4. And he said, now our expectations are, we're going so well, it's top 4 minimum. He said, if Leicester don't finish in that top 4, it's been a failure on Rodgers and the Leicester team this season.
Football fans?
Yeah.
Fickle? Never. Right.
We're bringing it all on Love Sport. So I'm excited to get into that conversation because only, Johnny, mere weeks ago, it was top 8, top 10, you know, first season under Rodgers. It changed to top 6, and now all of a sudden it's top 4 minimum.
It's quite something, isn't it? I want to talk a bit about that game because it gave us, I think, the finest chant heard in the Premier League so far this season. Jamie Vardy, your wife is a grass, your wife is a grass, your wife is a grass, and so on and so on. Vardy, of course, silenced his critics, or rather Rebecca's critics, the Burnley fans, by scoring and cupping his ears. But you do quite like that from the supporters, don't you?
Oh, I love a bit of to and fro from the sets of fans. You've got to enjoy a bit of banter on the terraces, songs like that. You know, it would have took them hours to come up with that. It's pure, you know, creative genius at its best. And there's nothing more than, you know, giving the player a fire to go and score. You always like to see him run over to the away fans, which he did. He didn't want to celebrate with his Leicester teammates. He ran over, didn't he, to do the cupping of the ear, which I enjoyed. And he done that earlier in the season against Sheffield United, who were giving him similar stick.
He is a world-class wind-up merchant. Well, you mentioned Sheffield United there. It's the Sheffield United fan show from 10:30. What's the take from the Blades fans then? Were they brilliant or were Arsenal poor?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to talk much about the game. We'll probably do a little bit of tourism, what you can expect if you visit Sheffield. They do quite a bit of snooker up there,
Oh, really?
The Crucible. We're going to be talking about that. Other areas maybe you should visit. I don't think there's a need to pour over the game. It was yesterday's news, today's fish and chip paper. Do we need to talk about it, JB?
Are you an Arsenal fan? Yeah, I'm afraid, mate, you are contractually obliged to delve into quite why the Gunners are rubbish. Lys Mousset, Talented, hopeless, what's your take?
Yeah, we have to talk about the game and talk about it we should. And I really want to get into it. I'll be joined by James Shield from the Sheffield Star, who's a fantastic bloke. And he texted me last night and I texted him. I said, do we have to talk tomorrow? And he texted me back. He said, your boys were absolutely rubbish. You just wait for this one. So I am waiting indeed. It should be a fiery half an hour. So I may have to mount some small defence.
Well, it sounds like a cracking set of shows, Charlie. I'll be listening on my way home, as I always do. It's West Ham from 7, Palace from 8, the Fan Show from 9. That's looking at all the Champions League and Championship action. Leicester City from 10 and Sheffield United, your favourite, from 10:30. Coming up, we're going to have all of the latest Champions League team news.
Monday is a truly awful way to spend 1/7 of your life. I guarantee it.
Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it.
Sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Henna, men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're in
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
There are fewer than 10 days to get ready for Brexit. Find out what you need to do to prepare now at gov.uk/Brexit.
I'm Leslie from North Essex. I couldn't believe that after 5 minutes I'd saved over £900 on my energy bills. When my car insurance was then due for renewal, I went back to a spokesman said and reduced my premium by over £500. I thought that my home insurance was expensive. When I shopped around on a spokesman said, I saved a staggering £1,100. I've saved £2,500. I cannot believe it was that easy.
A spokesmansaid.com, fighting for you, saving you money.
Making small changes to your lifestyle could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. Start now by taking our free How Are You quiz. Just search 1U.
This is Love Sport.
We've got some Manchester City team news for you from tonight's Champions League clash against Atalanta. Well, it's another Pep lineup. We've been told that he could revert to, centre-backs, actual defenders, John Stones and Otamendi back in the team, but not to be. It's Ederson in net, a back four of Kyle Walker, Rodrigo, midfielder, Fernandinho, midfielder, and Benjamin Mendy, winger/nutcase. A midfield three. This is where I start getting excited, Guy. Gundogan, Foden, and Kevin De Bruyne, and the best available front three to him, you would have to say, Raheem Sterling, Riyad Mahrez, and Sergio Aguero. But we got to start with Big Phil. Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord above. I have been talking for so long about the need to actually start Philip, to give him minutes in this competition in particular. 2 wins from 2 so far. They've got that little bit of leeway, and I back him absolutely to be one of the best players on that pitch tonight.
It'll be interesting to see how he goes, won't it? Because I think it's the sort of game that will allow Man City and Atalanta as well to really play their football. Both teams enjoy passing the ball, moving it quickly and scoring goals, and I think we could see a high scoring one tonight. I think Man City obviously favourites tonight. I think they will win, and I hope that Phil Foden takes the opportunity. I think if there's one thing that's worked in his favour by staying at Man City this season, rather than going out on loan, it's that they haven't done as brilliantly as they have done, because any manager is more likely to make changes when the team is faltering a little bit. And with David Silva, as we know, already going to be leaving the club at the end of the season, so he might just think, well, if I was going to have to phase him in next year, then why not start a little bit earlier? David Silva had a great game on Saturday. He is a player of the absolute highest class and has been for a long, long time. I'm not suddenly saying jettison him and replace him with Foden and all will be better. But I think Foden now has more of an opportunity when he's given a bit of game time. I think he's a little bit older, of course, and I think he will know that there is more of a real possibility of actually forcing his way into the first team plans as we go deeper into this season and looking ahead to next as well. I think it's an exciting prospect, and I think it should be a good game to watch.
Yeah, I think absolutely I will have my eye on
Stones
Phil
and
Foden.
Otamendi are on the bench, aren't they?
Well, let's talk about this. They are, and there are two options here. The first is that neither man is actually fit enough in practice to come back in and start. That's possible, but we were told the situation with Otamendi was kind of a very slight back problem. So the idea that he's still crocked, I'm not so sure. The alternative, of course, is that heavens above, Pep Guardiola loved what he saw from Rodrigo and Fernandinho against Crystal Palace, and they were good, and he's suddenly gone, hang on a minute, these two are as good, if not better, at centre-half than my actual defenders.
Well, there is a chance he thinks that. I think it's probably somewhere in between, to be honest, Johnny. I think there's probably an element of no need to rush players back when I've had these two do well for me at the weekend. Clean sheet, of course, against a very decent Crystal Palace side. And he also probably wants to send a message. Remember, it was John Stones and Otamendi who played together at the back when Man City lost to Norwich a few weeks ago. And it wasn't like they were the victims of terrible bad luck. They were the victims of terrible defending, particularly from Otamendi. So maybe Pep saying, look, I'm happy enough with what these guys have been doing. We know how many options they've got in midfield in particular. So he might think I can keep playing at least one, if not both, of Rodri and Fernandinho in there, in centre-back, if I need to. These guys got to prove that they are worthy of taking that place back off them.
Joao Cancelo clearly hasn't taken Kyle Walker's place off him. He was included against Crystal Palace at the weekend. I thought he did okay. I didn't think he was particularly special. How has he impressed you generally? Because 60 million quid for a wing-back, I'm sorry, even in today's market, I'm expecting fireworks.
Well, they paid 50 million for Mendy, and he's barely played.
He is good, though. He's properly good when he's
he
at
plays.
his best.
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because you're competing with Kyle Walker, who is an established player at Manchester City, even if he's dropped off the radar for England. And yeah, it seems like Man City only pay more than £50 million for fullbacks, and Cancelo is going to be no different. My overall take would be that I've probably not seen enough of him to make a conclusive judgment, Johnny, but Pep Guardiola, when he chooses a player and sanctions spending big money on him, he normally has pretty good reason to do that. So I can only imagine that we're going to see the best of him in future, that it may in turn bring out the best of Kyle Walker, who has maybe had a bit of an easier ride with Danilo as his backup. But no, it's an interesting looking City team. I expect an open game tonight. It's certainly a strong team going forward when you've got Gundogan, Foden, De Bruyne, Sterling, Mahrez and Aguero. Wow. I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it, how good an attacking team that is. But yeah, I think Man City, they'll make it 3 wins out of 3. And if he's starting Foden tonight, how well does that augur for if they can potentially seal qualification early, and then maybe he'll get more game time in Europe's top competition towards the end of the group stage?
Really exciting. I'm so excited he's in the team. We haven't had the Tottenham Hotspur team news yet, but the official Spurs Twitter have tweeted, "Not long until team news. Who do you want to see in today's starting 11?" And asking that question has very quickly been proven to be an error. The first response is the youth team. The second is not Aurier Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld or Danny Rose, i.e. the back four. And the only serious response is Lo Celso, because the next one is Paulo Dybala, who they failed to sign in the summer.
They've got funnier Spurs fans.
They have. The next is Dembele, who they've sold. The next is Michael Dawson, who they sold years ago. The next is 11 Sissokos. The next is someone who cares. And then we do get into a serious few. Then we get Kyle Walker
again. It's quite telling, though, isn't it, Johnny? It's quite telling because, rightly or wrongly, social media is used as a bit of a bellwether for fans' feeling and satisfaction and all the rest of it. And those responses tell you one thing, that there is absolutely no faith, I think it's fair to say, placed in not just a few players in particular, but the team as a whole. And for a team that was 4 months ago playing in a Champions League final, even if it was a minor miracle that they got there, that was, maybe a convincing performance away against the Liverpool side who weren't that good on the night from lifting Europe's Premier competition. And we were speaking to Charlie Eccleshare from The Athletic earlier, and he was saying he might make changes, but it's not rotation. It's that he doesn't really know who his best players are. For Serge Aurier to even be within a shout of getting a game is ludicrous. I have played with worse right backs than him at very amateur Saturday morning league football level.
Off it.
He's terrible. He costs his team either a goal or a man.
You're
getting
telling
sent
me
off.
Serge Aurier doesn't get in your Sunday team?
I've got a bloke in my Saturday team. A Sunday team might be slightly better, I don't know. But my Saturday team, a bloke called Matt Sarr, is a really good right back. And honestly, I think he would be better than Serge Aurier.
It's a big shout. It's a big shout.
You haven't seen him play. You've seen Serge Aurier play, and you know he's not very good. But the point is, Johnny, that he has been so poor this season. And let's be honest, he's not
been poor very often before for Spurs because he's had so little game time because Pochettino clearly doesn't trust him. And yet he is still, and I'm seeing it now, in the starting 11 for Spurs tonight. So you're looking at Gazaniga, Serge Aurier, Davinson Sanchez, Jan Vertonghen and Ben Davis, Moussa Sissoko and Tanguy and Ndombele in midfield, Eric Lamela, Dele Alli, Heung-min Son and Harry Kane.
Pretty good.
It still looks like a decent team on paper. Serge Aurier, I would seriously argue, aside. Vertonghen, though, is so far below the player that he was, even a year ago, but certainly 2-3 years ago, that it's not maybe the team that it could have been once upon a time. But you'd have to say that there's no obvious reason there that Spurs shouldn't be beating Red Star Belgrade tonight.
I've just had quite a depressing realisation. Every single player on the Manchester City bench would start for Arsenal. Every single one. Bravo, Stones, Jesus, Bernardo Silva, David Silva, João Cancelo and Otamendi. Every single one starts for Arsenal.
Even Claudio Bravo?
Even Claudio Bravo.
That's harsh on Leno.
It is. But
you're in that sort of mood, aren't you?
For the sake of argument, they all...
You could have David Seaman playing goal for you at the moment, you'd say sack him.
No, okay, I'll leave Leno his place. Every outfield player there would start for Arsenal. Who wouldn't?
In fairness, that's not too damning of Arsenal. You were listing there Bernardo Silva, David Silva... I mean, Otamendi's not brilliant, to be fair.
But that does show how far away Arsenal and pretty much every team in the Premier League, bar Liverpool, is off the strength in depth of the City team. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I guess there is something to be said for that, Johnny. I think that Spurs, it goes without saying that it's vital that they win tonight. I think you look at what they did last season in the Champions League alone, forget the other kind of maelstrom going on around the club at the moment with all sorts of rumours and all the rest of it. But last season, they scraped into the knockout rounds of the Champions League. I think they had something like 3 points from their first 3 games. They've got 1 point from their first 2 so far. They need, I think, a win, given that this is the home fixture against Red Star Belgrade. That's a team that beat Liverpool at home last season. So the trip to Belgrade is going to be a tough one. So Spurs need to get a win tonight to at least stave off the talk of crisis for another few days.
It's absolutely crucial. They do. Guy, it's been a pleasure, as ever, spending 4 hours in your wonderful company. It's been a cracking show. Thanks for listening in at home. Stay with us here on Love Sport. You've got the fan shows coming up, starting with West Ham. Charlie Hawkins will have updates for you throughout tonight's Champions League action and revel in the brilliance of Phil Foden.
This is Love Sport.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell